The night Isabella Hart threw herself in front of a mafia boss's bullet, she didn't know she was signing away her freedom. She thought she was saving a stranger. Instead, she woke up in a gilded cage, owned by the most dangerous man in Verona City, Dominic Caruso. A man whose kiss could feel like salvation and whose rage could burn the world down. This is the story of how one selfless act dragged a quiet book restorer into a war she never asked for and a love she couldn't escape. Stay until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The autumn rain had been falling on Verona City for 3 days straight, turning the streets into mirrors that reflected the neon signs and streetlights in fractured, bleeding colors. October had arrived with a vengeance, bringing with it the kind of cold that seeped into your bones and made you remember every mistake you'd ever made. Isabella Hart stood in the back room of Restoration and Remnants, her small bookshop tucked between a closed-down pawn shop and a Vietnamese restaurant on Castellan Street. The smell of old leather and aged paper filled her lungs, familiar, comforting, safe. In her hands, she held a first edition of Wuthering Heights, its spine cracked with age, its pages yellowed but still intact. She'd been working on it for 3 weeks, carefully removing the old glue, reinforcing the binding, treating each page with the reverence it deserved. This was her world. Quiet, controlled, predictable. It was the world she'd built after everything fell apart. "You're still here?" Marcy's voice cut through her concentration. Her friend and part-time shop assistant stood in the doorway, already wrapped in her coat, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. "Bells, it's almost 9. Even the ghosts have gone home." Isabella didn't look up. "Just finishing this section. The binding was more damaged than I thought." "It's always more damaged than you think." Marcy walked closer, her boots clicking on the hardwood floor. "You know what your problem is? You care too much about broken things." The words landed harder than Marcy intended. Isabella's hand stilled on the book, and for a moment the only sound was the rain hammering against the windows. "I'll lock up," Isabella said quietly. "You should go. Ben's waiting." Marcy studied her for a long moment, her expression softening. "You can't keep doing this, working until you're too tired to think. It's been 2 years, Bells. Michael wouldn't want—" "Marcy." Isabella's voice was gentle but firm. "Please." Her friend sighed, recognizing the wall when she hit it. "Fine, but I'm bringing you real food tomorrow. None of this coffee and crackers nonsense." She paused at the door. "Lock up behind me. This neighborhood's getting worse." "I will. Good night, Mars." The door chimed as Marcy left, and then Isabella was alone again. Just the way she liked it, just the way she needed it. She returned to her work, her hands moving with practiced precision. The truth was, Marcy wasn't wrong. She did care too much about broken things. But broken things didn't hurt you. Broken things didn't leave. Broken things could be fixed if you were patient enough, careful enough, if you paid enough attention to the cracks and tears and places where everything had come apart. Unlike people, unlike her brother. Michael's face flashed through her mind, laughing, 22 years old, full of life and bad decisions. The car accident had been ruled her fault. She'd been driving. She'd been the one who looked away for just a second. She'd been the one who lived. Isabella pushed the memory down, deep where it couldn't reach her. Work, focus. One stitch at a time, one page at a time, one day at a time. The gunshot shattered the silence like a hammer through glass. Isabella's head snapped up, her heart lurching into her throat. The sound had come from outside, close, too close. Then another shot. And another. The rapid-fire crack of automatic weapons filled the night, turning Castellan Street into a war zone. She dropped the book and ran to the front window, her breath coming in short gasps. Through the rain-streaked glass, she saw chaos unfolding like a scene from a nightmare. 2 black SUVs had boxed in a silver Maserati in the middle of the street, their headlights cutting through the rain. Men in dark clothes were pouring out, weapons raised, shouting in voices that carried more violence than words. The Maserati's driver's side door was open, and behind it, using it as cover, was a man. Even from her window, even through the rain and darkness, Isabella could see him clearly. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His face was composed, impossibly, terrifyingly composed, as bullets sparked off the car around him. He had a gun in his hand, returning fire with movements that were too smooth, too practiced. This wasn't his first gunfight. "Get inside," Isabella whispered to the empty shop, her hands pressed against the glass. "Just get inside somewhere safe." But there was nowhere safe. The men were closing in, a tightening noose of violence. She watched as one of them circled wide, flanking the Maserati, getting into position. The man behind the car door couldn't see him, couldn't see the gun being raised, aimed at his back. Isabella's body moved before her mind caught up. She was through the door, the bell chiming cheerfully behind her, a sound so absurdly normal it almost made her laugh. The rain hit her like a fist, cold and hard, soaking through her cardigan in seconds. Her feet splashed through puddles as she ran into the street, her voice tearing from her throat. "Get down!" Time did something strange then. It didn't slow down exactly. That only happened in movies. Instead, everything became hyper-real, every detail burning into her memory with painful clarity. The man behind the car door turned, his eyes finding hers across the distance. They were dark, so dark they were almost black, and in them she saw surprise, followed immediately by fury. Not at her, at the situation, at the fact that a civilian had just run into his war. The gunman who'd been flanking him pivoted, his weapon tracking toward Isabella. She saw the barrel, saw his finger on the trigger, saw the moment he decided she was acceptable collateral damage. The man behind the car door moved. He was fast, impossibly fast, but not fast enough. He was too far away. He couldn't reach her, couldn't save her. But he tried anyway. He lunged from behind the car door, his gun coming up, his voice a roar that cut through the rain. "No!" Isabella didn't think. She threw herself forward, her body colliding with his as the gun went off. The sound was deafening, so close it felt like it was inside her head. Something hit her, a freight train made of fire, slamming into her shoulder and spinning her around. She fell, the wet pavement rushing up to meet her. The man tried to catch her, his arm wrapping around her waist, but gravity won. They went down together, him twisting his body to take the impact, her landing half across his chest. Pain exploded through her shoulder, white-hot and overwhelming. She tried to scream, but nothing came out. The rain fell on her face, mixing with tears she didn't remember shedding. "Stay down!" The man's voice was right in her ear, rough and commanding and edged with something she couldn't name. Fury, fear. "Don't move! Don't you dare move!" Gunfire erupted again, so close she could feel the percussion in her chest. The man shifted beneath her, his body curling around hers, protecting her even as he raised his weapon over her shoulder and fired. Once, twice, 3 times. Someone screamed, tires squealed. The black SUVs were retreating, their doors slamming shut, engines roaring as they fled into the night. And then silence. Just the rain and her ragged breathing and the thunder of her heart. "You're shot." The man's voice had changed, gone cold and clinical. His hand was on her shoulder, pressing down, and the pain that shot through her made her vision white out. "The bullet went through, clean. You're going to be fine." "I don't..." Isabella tried to speak, but her tongue felt too big for her mouth. "I don't feel fine." "You will." He shifted, sitting up, pulling her with him. She got her first clear look at his face, and even through the haze of pain and shock, she understood that this was a man who commanded fear. Sharp features, a jaw that could have been carved from marble, and those eyes, those impossibly dark eyes that promised violence to anyone who crossed him. But right now, looking at her, they held something else. Disbelief. Anger. And beneath it all, the faintest flicker of something that might have been respect. "What the hell were you thinking?" he demanded. "Running into a firefight? Are you insane? You were going to die." The words came out slurred, her body starting to shake. Shock, probably. She'd read about shock. "He was behind you, going to shoot you. So you decided to save me." It wasn't a question. He stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, his hand still pressed to her shoulder, his other arm supporting her back. "You don't even know me." "Doesn't matter." Isabella's vision was starting to blur at the edges, darkness creeping in. Couldn't just watch someone die. Christ. The word was a prayer and a curse. He looked around. at the empty street, at the rain, at the blood, her blood, spreading across the wet pavement. Then his attention snapped back to her, sharp and focused. Listen to me. What's your name? Isabella. It seemed important to tell him, important that someone know who she was if she died here. Isabella Hart. Isabella. He repeated it like he was memorizing it. I'm Dominic, and I'm going to get you help, but I need you to stay awake. Can you do that for me? She wanted to say yes, wanted to stay awake, stay present, stay alive. But the darkness was so heavy, pulling at her like water, like drowning. Isabella, Dominic's voice sharpened, his hand on her face now, tilting her chin up. Eyes on me. Stay with me. She tried. God, she tried. But the last thing she saw before the darkness took her were his eyes, dark and furious and filled with a promise that scared her more than the bullet had. The promise that this wasn't over, that she had just changed everything. The cage. Consciousness returned in pieces. First, pain. A throbbing, burning agony in her left shoulder that made her want to sink back into the darkness. Then, sensation. Softness beneath her. The kind of softness that didn't belong in a hospital bed. Silk, maybe. Expensive sheets that cost more than she made in a month. Finally, sound. Voices, low and tense, speaking in Italian. È una testimone, Dominic. Non può restare qui. A man's voice, urgent. Non me ne frega niente. Dominic's voice, cold as winter. Stays here until I say otherwise. The family won't. I don't care what the family thinks. She took a bullet for me, Marco. That means she's under my protection until this is finished. Isabella's eyes fluttered open. The ceiling above her was coffered, decorated with ornate molding that belonged in a palazzo, not a hospital. The walls were paneled in dark wood, and a massive window took up one entire side of the room, offering a view of the Verona city skyline that could only mean one thing. This was a penthouse. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her shoulder, stealing her breath. Don't. The voice came from the corner of the room, and she turned her head to find Dominic watching her. He was sitting in a leather chair, still wearing the same suit from last night, though now it was rumpled and blood-stained. Her blood. His eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, but when they met hers, they were sharp, alert. You'll tear the stitches. Where am I? Isabella's voice came out as a croak. Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I'm giving you right now. He stood, moving with the fluid grace of a predator, and approached the bed. In the daylight, because it was daylight, she could see now, morning sun streaming through the window. He was even more imposing than she remembered. Tall, probably 6'2" or 6'3", with the kind of build that came from actual use rather than gym vanity. How do you feel? Like I got shot. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Fair enough. The bullet went clean through your shoulder. No bone damage, no arterial tears. You were lucky. Lucky. Isabella laughed, then wished she hadn't as pain rippled through her. I got shot. I don't think that qualifies as lucky. You're alive. That's lucky. He pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat, his gaze never leaving her face. The doctor said you'll be fine in a few weeks. Full recovery, no permanent damage. What doctor? Where am I really? This isn't a hospital. No, it's not. So She looked around again at the expensive furniture, the silk sheets, the door that probably locked from the outside. I'm being kept here. You're being protected here. Dominic's voice remained calm, reasonable, the kind of calm that felt dangerous. Isabella, those men last night weren't random criminals. They were professionals, trained, armed, and they saw your face. They know you helped me. So call the police, file a report. I'll go into witness protection or whatever. The police can't protect you from these people. But you can. She met his eyes, saw the truth there before he even spoke. Yes. The single word carried absolute certainty, absolute confidence, the kind of confidence that only came from one source, power. Real power, the kind that lived in the shadows and didn't need uniforms or badges. Who are you? Isabella asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Someone who owes you a debt. He leaned forward, his forearms resting on his knees. You saved my life, Isabella Hart. That means something in my world. It means I keep you safe until the threat is neutralized. Your world. She repeated the phrase, tasting the weight of it. What world is that? One you don't want to be part of. He stood abruptly as if the conversation was over. There's food being brought up, clothes in the closet, all your size, everything you need. The bathroom is through there. He gestured to a door on the left. Don't try the main door. It's locked, and there are guards outside. Guards. The word stuck in her throat. So I am a prisoner. You're a guest. But his eyes said something different. One who's alive because she made a very brave, very stupid decision last night. Try to remember that when you're angry about the locked door. He turned to leave, but Isabella's voice stopped him. Dominic. He looked back, one hand on the door frame. Thank you, she said, the words feeling strange on her tongue. For getting me help, for whatever this is. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or something softer. Then it was gone, replaced by that mask of cold control. Get some rest, he said. We'll talk more later. The door closed behind him with a soft click, followed by the unmistakable sound of a lock engaging. Isabella stared at the ceiling, her shoulder throbbing, her mind racing. She'd saved a stranger's life, and now she was locked in a penthouse, being protected by a man who spoke Italian with his guards and had the kind of authority that didn't need explanation. Whatever world she'd stumbled into last night, she had a feeling it was going to be a lot harder to leave than it had been to enter. The revelation. 3 days passed in the gilded cage. Isabella spent them cataloging her prison. The room was enormous, larger than her entire apartment. The bathroom was marble and chrome, with a shower that had more settings than her car. The closet held an entire wardrobe in her exact size. Jeans, sweaters, dresses, even pajamas, all designer brands she'd only seen in magazine ads. Someone had been very thorough. The window didn't open, she discovered. The glass was thick, probably bulletproof, offering a view of the city she couldn't touch. She was 40 stories up, maybe more, in a building she didn't recognize. At night, the city lights spread out below her like scattered diamonds, beautiful and distant. Food appeared 3 times a day, delivered by a silent woman named Elena, who wouldn't meet her eyes and hurried out as quickly as possible. The meals were elaborate. Pasta with fresh vegetables, perfectly grilled fish, salads with ingredients Isabella couldn't even name. Nothing like the cereal and coffee she usually survived on, but no matter how comfortable the cage, it was still a cage. Dominic came to check on her twice a day, morning and evening like clockwork. He'd ask how she felt, examine her shoulder with hands that were surprisingly gentle, and provide vague non-answers to every question she asked. When can I leave? Soon. What happened that night? A business dispute. Who were those men? No one you need to worry about. It was maddening, but what was even more maddening was the way her traitorous body reacted to his presence, the way her heart rate kicked up when he entered the room, the way she noticed details she shouldn't, the way his jaw tightened when he was frustrated, the small scar above his right eyebrow, the way his cologne smelled like cedar and something darker. She was attracted to him. Despite the situation, despite the locked door, despite everything screaming that this man was dangerous, maybe because of it. On the 4th morning, Isabella woke to find Elena had brought breakfast but left the door slightly ajar. Probably an accident. The older woman was usually so careful. Isabella stared at that gap for a long moment, her heart pounding. Then she made a decision. She got out of bed slowly, testing her shoulder. It still hurt, but the pain had dulled to a persistent ache rather than the sharp agony of the first few days. She could move, she could walk, she could explore. The hallway outside was wide and elegant, with more of that dark wood paneling and artwork that probably cost more than her shop. Isabella moved quietly, barefoot on the thick carpet, following the sound of voices. The apartment, if you could call something this massive an apartment, seemed to go on forever. She passed a formal dining room, a study lined with books, a room that appeared to be set up as a home gym. Finally, she found the source of the voices. A large living area, all leather furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows. Dominic stood by the window, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. Two men in dark suits flanked him, their attention on whatever conversation was happening. No, I don't care what Nico says, Dominic was speaking, his voice hard. The shipment goes through my channels, or it doesn't go at all. Make sure he understands that. Yes. Tell him if he has a problem, he can take it up with me personally. He ended the call and turned, then froze when he saw Isabella standing in the doorway. The two men immediately reached for their waistbands, hands going to weapons she couldn't see but knew were there. Dominic held up one hand, stopping them. Leave us. The men exchanged glances but obeyed, moving past Isabella without a word. She watched them go, then looked back at Dominic. Your door was open, she said, not quite an apology. I noticed. He slipped his phone into his pocket, his expression unreadable. Elena's getting careless. Or maybe she feels bad keeping someone locked up for no reason. There's a reason. Then tell me what it is. Isabella's frustration finally boiled over. I've been here for 4 days, Dominic. 4 days with no explanation, no contact with the outside world, nothing but vague assurances that I'm being protected. From what? From who? From people who would hurt you to get to me. Why would they want to get to you? What do you do? He was quiet for a long moment, studying her. Then he walked to a bar cart in the corner and poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. It was barely 10 in the morning. What do you think I do, Isabella? The question caught her off guard. I don't know. Something illegal. Something that involves guns and people trying to kill you in the street. Keep going. You have guards. You speak Italian. You live in a penthouse that probably costs more than most people make in a lifetime. She took a breath. And people are afraid of you. I can see it. Elena won't even look at me. Those men who were just here, they do anything you asked without question. Very observant. He took a sip of his drink. So, what's your conclusion? I think you're in the mafia. She expected him to laugh, to deny it, to do something other than what he actually did, which was smile. A small, dangerous smile that made her stomach flip. Close enough, he said. The words hung in the air between them, confirming what she'd suspected but hadn't wanted to believe. Oh my God. Isabella's knees went weak. She reached for the doorframe, steadying herself. You're a crime boss, gangster, mafia don. Pick your term. He set down his glass. Though I prefer to think of myself as a businessman who operates in markets the government would rather pretend don't exist. This isn't funny. I'm not joking. Isabella's mind was spinning. She'd saved a mafia boss. She was being held in a mafia boss's penthouse. The men outside her door weren't just guards, they were criminals. People who hurt others for money, who broke laws, who... Hey! Dominic was suddenly in front of her, his hands on her shoulders, careful of the injured one. Breathe. You're hyperventilating. I don't... She tried to pull away, but he held firm. Look at me. His voice commanded, and her eyes snapped to his without conscious thought. You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you. No one here will hurt you. Do you understand? You're a criminal. Yes. You kill people. When necessary. Oh, God. She was going to be sick. Isabella. He gave her a gentle shake. Listen to me. The men who tried to kill me that night, they were my enemies, people who have been trying to take over my territory for months. If they'd succeeded, it would have started a war. Innocent people would have died. You prevented that. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You just saw someone in danger and acted. That's who you are. His hands moved from her shoulders to her arms, his touch surprisingly gentle. But now you're in danger because of it. Those men saw you. They know you helped me. In my world, that makes you a liability or an asset. Either way, you're a target. So what happens now? Isabella hated how small her voice sounded. Now, I keep you safe until I can eliminate the threat. Until the men who came after me that night are no longer a problem. And how do you eliminate them? His eyes went cold. However, I have to. Isabella shivered, suddenly very aware of how close he was standing, how his hands were still on her arms, how she could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the tired lines around his eyes that said he hadn't been sleeping well. I want to go home, she whispered. I know. Something in his expression softened. But you can't. Not yet. I'm sorry. Are you? Sorry? More than you know. He released her, stepping back, putting distance between them again. I never wanted to drag a civilian into this. Into my life. But you're here now, and I will do everything in my power to keep you safe until you can leave. That's a promise. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Why do you care? You don't know me. You took a bullet for me. He said it like that explained everything. In my world, that kind of loyalty is worth more than gold, even if you didn't know what you were being loyal to. They stood there for a moment, the morning sun streaming through the windows, the city sprawling below them, and Isabella realized with a strange certainty that her life would never be the same. That quiet bookshop, those peaceful evenings with old paper and cracked bindings, that version of her life was gone. She'd run into a war zone to save a stranger, and now she was living with the consequences. Can I at least call someone? She asked finally. My friend Marcy, she'll be worried. The shop, already taken care of. Dominic moved to a side table and picked up a phone. Elena has been going to your shop every day, keeping it open. As far as anyone knows, you're visiting a sick relative upstate. Your friend Marcy has been told the same thing. You researched me. I protect what's mine. That means knowing everything about you. I'm not yours. You are until this is over. He handed her the phone. You can call your friend, but keep it brief and stick to the story. She can't know where you really are. Isabella took the phone with shaking hands. She wanted to argue, to fight, to demand her freedom. But the truth was, she was in over her head. She'd jumped into dark water, and now she needed to trust that the man holding the lifeline wasn't going to let her drown, even if he was the one who'd created the storm in the first place. She dialed Marcy's number and waited for her friend to answer, trying to figure out how to lie to the person who knew her best, trying to pretend everything was fine when nothing would ever be fine again. Behind her, Dominic watched with those dark, unreadable eyes, and Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just in his cage. She was becoming part of his world. The shift. Days blurred together in the penthouse. Isabella's shoulder healed slowly, the sharp pain fading to a dull ache, then to nothing more than stiffness when she moved too quickly. Dominic kept his distance mostly, checking in but never lingering, always professional, always controlled. But the apartment itself revealed more than he intended. Isabella began to notice things. The way men came and went at all hours, speaking in low voices. The way Dominic's jaw tightened when he took certain phone calls. The night she heard shouting in Italian, followed by the sound of something breaking. She was living in the heart of a criminal empire, and it was impossible to ignore. On the 8th day, Elena let her leave the bedroom freely. Mr. Caruso says you can move around the apartment, she said in heavily accented English. But you must not try to leave. The guards have orders. Isabella didn't ask what those orders were. She explored carefully, cataloging her new boundaries. The apartment was massive, easily 8,000 square feet, with 6 bedrooms, a commercial-grade kitchen, a wine cellar, and that home gym she'd glimpsed before. Everything was expensive, elegant, and cold, like a museum where people happened to live. The only room with any warmth was the study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with volumes in English, Italian, and what looked like Latin. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface covered with papers and a laptop. The windows offered the same spectacular view, but somehow, in this room, the city felt closer, more real. Isabella found herself drawn there, especially in the afternoons when Dominic was occupied elsewhere. She'd pull books from the shelves, classics mostly, with a surprising number of philosophy texts, and curl up in the leather chair by the window, letting herself escape into someone else's story. It was there that Dominic found her on the 10th day. Dante, he said from the doorway, making her jump. Interesting choice. Isabella looked down at the book in her hands. Inferno, with annotations in the margins. It was on the shelf. Those annotations are my father's. He entered the room, moving to the bar cart that seemed to be a fixture in every space. He believed every man should understand hell before trying to build heaven. Sounds like he was a pessimist. He was a realist. Dominic poured 2 glasses of red wine without asking if she wanted one, then handed her one and settled into the chair across from hers. He understood that some work requires getting your hands dirty. Is that what you do? Dirty work? Sometimes. He took a sip, studying her over the rim. Does that frighten you? Isabella considered the question honestly. She should be frightened. She should be terrified. But sitting here in this warm room with the afternoon sun turning his eyes from black to deep brown, she found she wasn't. I don't know what I am, she admitted. Confused, frustrated, definitely angry about being kept here. But frightened? She shook her head. Not of you. You should be. Probably. She set the book aside. Can I ask you something? You can ask, I may not answer. Those men that night, the ones who tried to kill you, have you found them? His expression went flat. Some of them. And? And they're no longer a problem. Isabella understood what he wasn't saying. You killed them. I eliminated a threat to my organization. And to you. He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. They would have come for you eventually, Isabella. Used you to get to me. I couldn't allow that. So you just executed them? I did what was necessary. He leaned forward, his intensity pinning her in place. This is who I am, what I am. I don't apologize for it, and I don't regret it. The world I live in doesn't have rules like yours. It has power and violence and people who will take everything from you if you show weakness. I can't afford weakness. Then why are you protecting me? Isn't that a weakness? The question seemed to catch him off guard. He sat back, his jaw working, and for a moment Isabella thought he wouldn't answer. Then, you took a bullet for me, a stranger. You didn't know who I was, what I was, and you still threw yourself in front of a gun. His voice had gone rough. In my world, that kind of act it's sacred. It creates a bond, a debt that can only be repaid with absolute loyalty. You saved my life, Isabella Hart. That means your life is now my responsibility. I don't want to be anyone's responsibility. Too bad. You are. They sat in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with something Isabella couldn't name. Then she asked the question that had been haunting her for days. When can I go home? Dominic's expression shuddered. Soon. You keep saying that. How soon is soon? When the threat is neutralized, when I'm certain you'll be safe. And when will that be? I don't know. He stood abruptly, moving to the window. There are complications. What kind of complications? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, the men who attacked me that night weren't random enemies. They were connected to someone inside my organization, someone close to me. Isabella's stomach dropped. A traitor. Yes, the word was bitter. Someone I trusted has been feeding information to my enemies. That's how they knew where I'd be that night, how they knew my route, my security detail, everything. He turned back to her, and she saw the fury in his eyes, barely contained. Until I find out who it is, I can't risk letting you go. They could use you against me. So I'm, what, bait? Insurance. He moved closer, stopping just in front of her chair. I'm going to find the traitor, Isabella. And when I do, I'm going to end this war once and for all. But until then, you stay here, where I can protect you. I never asked for your protection. No, you just gave me your blood instead. He reached out, his fingers brushing her shoulder, not the injured one, the other, in a gesture that was almost tender. I will keep you safe. I swear it on everything I am. The intensity in his voice, in his eyes, stole her breath. This close, she could see details she'd missed before. The thin scar through his eyebrow, the way his hair fell slightly over his forehead, the fullness of his lower lip. Stop, she told herself. Stop noticing him like that. But her body didn't listen. Her body noticed the way his hand lingered on her shoulder, warm through her sweater. Noticed the way his gaze dropped to her mouth just for a second before snapping back up. Dominic. The moment shattered as his phone rang. He stepped back immediately, the professional mask slamming back into place as he answered. Yes. Where? How many? I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call and looked at Isabella, his expression grim. I have to go. Something's happened. What kind of something? The kind that requires my immediate attention. He headed for the door, then paused. Stay in the apartment. Don't answer the door for anyone except Elena or Marco. If something feels wrong, there's a panic button behind the desk. Press it, and 6 guards will be here in under 30 seconds. Dominic, you're scaring me. Good. Stay scared. Stay safe. He left, and she heard the lock click behind him. Isabella sat alone in the study, her heart racing, and realized with crystal clarity that she wasn't just in danger from faceless enemies anymore. She was in danger of caring about the man who'd made himself her jailer. The crack. Midnight found Isabella standing at the window of the main living room, unable to sleep. Dominic had been gone for 6 hours. Whatever he'd gone to handle, it was taking longer than he'd expected. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching the city lights blur. She thought about her shop, about Marcy, about the life she'd left behind. It felt like years ago instead of less than 2 weeks. The sound of the door unlocking made her turn. Dominic entered and Isabella's breath caught. He was covered in blood. Oh my God! She started toward him, but he held up a hand, stopping her. It's not mine. His voice was flat, emotionless. Most of it, anyway. Most of it? Isabella's hands were shaking. Dominic, what happened? Business. He moved past her toward the hallway, pulling off his jacket and dropping it on the floor. His white shirt was soaked through, the red stark against the fabric. I need a shower. You need a doctor. I've had worse. He disappeared into his room, and Isabella stood frozen for a moment before following. She found him in his bathroom, the space even more elaborate than hers, all black marble and chrome. He was trying to unbutton his shirt with hands that were shaking slightly. Let me help. Isabella moved forward without thinking, batting his hands away and working the buttons herself. You shouldn't... Shut up. She got the shirt open and helped him shrug it off, then immediately wished she hadn't. His torso was a map of violence. Old scars crisscrossed his chest and stomach, white lines and puckered marks that told stories of pain survived. But what made her breath catch was the fresh wound on his right side, a long gash, still bleeding sluggishly, that looked like a knife wound. Jesus, Dominic. It's shallow. He moved to the shower and turned on the water, steam immediately beginning to fill the space. Just a scratch. That is not a scratch. Isabella grabbed his arm before he could step under the spray. You need stitches. I've got a first aid kit. I'll handle it after. Like hell you will. Sit. She pointed at the marble bench built into the shower enclosure. Now. To her surprise, he obeyed. Maybe he was too tired to argue. Maybe he hurt worse than he was letting on. Either way, he sat, and Isabella found herself standing between his legs, examining the wound while the shower steamed around them. This is going to need cleaning first, she said, trying to sound clinical, trying to ignore the fact that she was touching his bare skin, that he was half naked in front of her, that the water was starting to soak through her clothes. There's medical supplies in the cabinet. He gestured to one of the drawers. Third one down. Isabella found antiseptic, gauze, and what looked like a professional-grade suture kit. Of course he had a suture kit. She brought it all back to where he sat and knelt down, level with the wound. This is going to hurt. It already hurts. She pressed the gauze soaked in antiseptic to the gash and felt him tense under her hands. But he didn't make a sound, didn't flinch away. He just sat there, breathing carefully, while she cleaned the wound. What happened tonight? She asked quietly, focusing on her work rather than looking at his face. Found out who's been passing information to our enemies. His voice was rough. Had to handle it. Handle it how? You don't want to know. Maybe I do. He was quiet for a moment, then, he was family, my cousin, someone I've known my whole life. The pain in his voice had nothing to do with the wound. He sold us out for money. For a chance at power, he thought he deserved more than I did. Isabella's hand stilled. What did you do to him? What I had to. He reached up, his hand covering hers where it rested against his ribs. This world, Isabella, it doesn't forgive betrayal. Can't. Once you show that kind of weakness, that mercy, everyone comes for you. My father taught me that. Your father sounds like he was hard. He was necessary. Dominic's thumb stroked across her knuckles, the gesture unconscious. He built this organization from nothing, kept our family safe, our territory secure. And when he died, his jaw clenched. When he died, some people thought I was too young, too soft, not ruthless enough to hold what he'd built. Were they right? What do you think? He met her eyes, and she saw the steel beneath the exhaustion. I've kept everything he built, expanded it, made us stronger. But it cost me. It costs me every day. Isabella understood then. Understood the loneliness she sometimes saw in his eyes, the weight he carried, the reason he kept himself so controlled. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a king of a violent kingdom, and kings couldn't afford to be weak. You're still bleeding, she said softly, returning to her work. I need to stitch this. You know how. I restore books. I'm very good with delicate stitching. She threaded the curved needle with steadier hands than she expected. This can't be that different. Skin is a lot less forgiving than paper. Then try not to move. She worked carefully, making small, precise stitches that would minimize scarring. Dominic watched her the entire time, his gaze heavy on her face, but he didn't speak, didn't protest. Just let her work, his hand still resting over hers on his ribs, warm and solid and somehow anchoring. When she tied off the last stitch, Isabella sat back on her heels, suddenly aware of how close they were, how intimate this moment was, kneeling between his legs in a steaming bathroom, her hands on his skin, his eyes dark and intense and fixed on her face. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not running. For not being afraid of what I am. His free hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Most people would be. I told you, I'm not afraid of you. You should be. But he said it like a confession, like a plea. I'm not a good man, Isabella. Maybe not. She turned her face into his palm, just slightly. But you're not as bad as you want everyone to think either. Something broke in his eyes. The control he kept so carefully cracked, and she saw the man beneath, tired, lonely, desperate for something he wouldn't name. His hand slid from her cheek to the back of her neck, fingers tangling in her hair. This is a mistake, he whispered. Probably. You should go, back to your room. Probably. But neither of them moved. They stayed frozen in that moment, the steam swirling around them, the water still running, the world outside forgotten. Isabella could feel his heartbeat against her palm, fast and hard. Could see the war in his expression, duty against desire, protection against possession. Then he made his choice. He pulled her up, his other hand spanning her waist, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like blood and rain and surrender. Isabella gasped against his mouth, her hands flying to his shoulders, and he groaned, deepening the kiss, pulling her closer until she was practically in his lap. She should stop this, should pull away, should remember that he was a criminal, that she was his prisoner, that this was insane. But God help her, she didn't want to stop. She wanted to drown in him, in this moment, in the fire that had been building between them since the night he'd caught her in his arms and promised her vengeance. She kissed him back with everything she had, tasting his desperation, feeling his need matching her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic pressed his forehead to hers. Fuck, he breathed. Isabella. The sound of his phone ringing shattered the moment. He pulled away, his expression closing off even as he reached for the device on the counter. What? Yes. Are you certain? Double the security on all entrances. I'll be there in an hour. He stood, putting distance between them, and when he looked at her again, the vulnerability was gone. The king was back. You should go, he said, his voice flat. Get some sleep. Dominic, please. The word was ragged. Just go. Isabella wanted to argue, wanted to demand they talk about what just happened, but she saw the exhaustion in every line of his body, saw the way he was holding himself together by pure will, and decided mercy was worth more than answers. Get some rest, she said quietly. You need it. She left him standing in the steam, and as she walked back to her room, she touched her lips where she could still taste him. Everything had changed. Again. And Isabella had no idea if that was salvation or damnation. The morning after the kiss arrived with pale sunlight and a silence so heavy it felt like drowning. Isabella woke with her fingers pressed to her lips, still tasting him, still feeling the desperate press of his mouth against hers. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the moment over and over. The steam, his hands in her hair, the way he'd looked at her like she was salvation and damnation wrapped in the same skin. She should regret it. Should be horrified that she'd kissed a man who'd admitted to killing his own cousin just hours before. But regret felt distant, theoretical, like something that belonged to the woman she'd been 2 weeks ago. That woman was gone. The bullet had killed her as surely as it had torn through Isabella's shoulder. When she finally emerged from her room, the apartment felt different, emptier. She found Elena in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with the same silent efficiency. But when Isabella asked where Dominic was, the older woman's expression tightened. Mr. Caruso had business. He left early this morning. When will he be back? Elena wouldn't meet her eyes. I don't know, miss. The evasion was clear. Dominic was avoiding her. Isabella spent the day wandering the apartment like a ghost, unable to settle, unable to focus. She tried reading, but the words blurred on the page. Tried watching the city from the windows, but the view felt like mockery. All that freedom just beyond the glass, unreachable as the moon. By evening, frustration had given way to anger. At Dominic for running. At herself for caring. At this entire impossible situation that had turned her life inside out. She was in the study, pacing like a caged animal, when Marco appeared in the doorway. The head of Dominic's security was a wall of a man, 6'4", with shoulders that barely fit through door frames, and a face that looked like it had stopped more than a few fists. But his eyes, when they looked at Isabella, held unexpected kindness. Miss Hart, he said in his gravelly voice. Mr. Caruso asked me to inform you that he'll be late tonight. He suggests you eat dinner without him. Of course he does. Isabella didn't bother hiding her bitterness. Because God forbid he actually face me after last night. Marco's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. He's protecting you. By hiding from me? By keeping his distance. There are things happening right now, Miss Hart. Things you don't understand. Things that could get very dangerous very quickly. He stepped into the room, his presence somehow comforting despite his size. The boss, he cares about you, more than he should. That makes you a target. I didn't ask to be anyone's weakness. No one ever does. Marco moved to the window, looking out at the darkening city. I've known Dominic since he was 16 years old, watched him grow from an angry kid who just lost his father into the man he is now. And in all that time, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Isabella's heart stuttered. What do you mean? Like you're something precious, something worth protecting even at the cost of everything he's built. Marco turned back to her, his expression grave. That terrifies him, because in our world, anything precious can be used against you, can be taken, can be destroyed. So what does he want? To keep me locked up here forever? He wants you safe, and he wants to want you less than he does. Marco's mouth twitched, almost a smile. I don't think he's going to succeed at either. Before Isabella could respond, Marco's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his entire demeanor changed, shoulders tensing, jaw hardening. I have to go. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone. What's wrong? Just stay inside. He was already moving, speaking rapidly into his phone in Italian. Isabella caught enough words to make her stomach drop. Attack. Warehouse. Blood. Then he was gone, and she was alone again with nothing but her racing thoughts and growing dread. Hours crawled by. Isabella tried calling Dominic, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She tried Marco, same thing. Even Elena had disappeared, leaving Isabella completely isolated in the vast, silent apartment. By midnight, fear had her by the throat. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. She was standing at the window, watching emergency lights flash in the distance when she heard the elevator ding. Her heart leaped. Dominic, finally. But when the door opened, it wasn't him. It was a man she'd never seen before. Tall, lean, with sharp features and eyes that held nothing but calculation. He wore an expensive suit and moved with the same predatory grace as Dominic, but where Dominic's presence felt controlled, this man's felt hungry. "Isabella Hart." He smiled and it didn't reach his eyes. "We finally meet." Isabella's hand went to her phone in her pocket, but the man raised his own weapon, a sleek black pistol that seemed to materialize from nowhere. "I wouldn't." His voice was pleasant, conversational, which made it more terrifying. "Put the phone on the table, slowly." She obeyed, her mind racing. The elevator required a key. This man had gotten past building security, had gotten past Dominic's guards. That meant, "You're wondering how I got in." He moved closer, the gun steady. It's amazing what information you can buy when you know the right people. Elevator codes, guard schedules, even the fact that Dominic's been keeping a pretty little bird in his gilded cage. "Who are you?" "Nico Caruso, Dominic's dear cousin." His smile widened. "Well, second cousin. And the man who's going to end his reign tonight." Isabella's blood went cold. This was the traitor. The one Dominic had mentioned, but he'd said he'd handled it, that his cousin was dead. "You're thinking he killed me already, aren't you?" Nico laughed. "That's what he thinks, what everyone thinks. I let him believe he'd won. Let him think the body his men burned was mine. But I've been planning this for months, Isabella, every detail, every contingency." He gestured with the gun toward the door. "Now, you're going to come with me quietly, or I'm going to shoot you in both kneecaps and drag you out. Your choice." "Dominic will kill you." "Dominic will try. That's the plan." Nico grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. "You're the bait, sweetheart. The thing he values more than his own life, apparently. When he comes for you, and he will come, I'll be ready. And when he's dead, I'll take everything he has. His territory, his organization, his legacy." He leaned in close, his breath hot against her ear. "Maybe I'll keep you too. You're pretty enough, and it would be poetic, wouldn't it? Fucking his woman in his bed after he's cold in the ground." Rage flashed through Isabella, hot and fierce. She drove her elbow back into Nico's stomach with all her strength. He grunted, his grip loosening just enough for her to wrench free and run. She made it 3 steps before something hard crashed into the back of her head. Pain exploded through her skull and the world tilted sideways. She felt herself falling, felt hands catching her, felt the darkness rushing in. The last thing she heard was Nico's voice, amused and cruel. "There's that spirit Dominic likes. Let's see if he likes it enough to die for." Then nothing. Isabella woke to cold. Bone-deep, shivering cold that told her she was no longer in the climate-controlled luxury of the penthouse. Her head throbbed with every heartbeat, and when she tried to move, she discovered her hands were zip-tied behind her back, cutting into her wrists. She forced her eyes open. Darkness at first, then shapes emerging. She was in some kind of warehouse, vast and empty, with high ceilings and broken windows that let in the sodium-yellow glow of streetlights. The floor beneath her was concrete, stained with things she didn't want to identify. "Good, you're awake." Nico emerged from the shadows, still holding that gun, still wearing that shark smile. "I was worried I'd hit you too hard. Where's the fun if you're not conscious to see your hero fall? You're insane." "I'm ambitious. There's a difference." He crouched in front of her, tilting her chin up with the barrel of the gun. "Dominic thinks he's untouchable, thinks his father's legacy makes him invincible. But legacy is just a story we tell ourselves to feel important. The truth is, power goes to whoever's willing to take it. He'll kill you." "Maybe, probably even." Nico shrugged. "But I'll have tried. That's more than most can say." He stood, checking his phone. He should be getting the message right about now. Let's see how fast he can move when he's motivated. As if on cue, Nico's phone rang. He answered with a grin. "Dominic, so good to hear from you." Even from across the warehouse, Isabella could hear the rage in Dominic's voice, distorted through the speaker but unmistakable. "If you hurt her, you'll what? Kill me? You already think you did that." Nico paced, energized. "But here's the thing, cousin. You got sloppy, emotional. You wanted revenge so badly you didn't verify the body. Amateur mistake." "Where is she?" Safe. For now. But that depends entirely on you. Nico's voice hardened. You're going to come alone to the address I text you. No Marco. No guards. No weapons. Just you, being the hero for your little bookworm. And if I see anyone else, if I even suspect you've brought backup, I'll put a bullet in her head and send you the video. I'll kill you slowly. Dominic's voice had gone quiet, which was somehow more terrifying than shouting. I'll make it last days, Nico. I'll make you beg for death. Looking forward to it. You have 1 hour. He ended the call and looked at Isabella. Your boyfriend's very motivated, almost romantic if it wasn't so pathetic. He's not my boyfriend. Please. I've had people watching you two for days, the way he looks at you, the way he's turned his entire operation upside down, keeping you safe. Nico laughed. He's obsessed. An obsession makes men stupid. Isabella said nothing, her mind racing. Dominic would come. She knew that with absolute certainty, and Nico would be ready. This warehouse was probably ringed with gunmen, every entrance covered, every angle accounted for. Dominic was walking into a trap, and there was nothing she could do to stop it, unless... She tested the zip ties carefully, feeling for weaknesses. They were tight, professional, but her hands were small. If she could fold her thumb in just right, create enough slack. Don't even think about it. Nico's gun was suddenly in her face again. Those ties are rated for 200 pounds of force. You're not breaking them. Worth a try. I like you, Isabella. You've got spine. He moved away, checking his phone again. It's almost a shame you got involved with Dominic. In another life, we might have been friends. In another life, you wouldn't be a psychopath. See, that's where you're wrong. I'm not crazy. I'm clear-eyed. I see the world exactly as it is, a place where the strong take what they want and the weak pretend morality makes them better. He gestured around the warehouse. This empire Dominic's father built? It was founded on blood and violence and the willingness to do whatever it takes. But somewhere along the way, Dominic forgot that, got soft, started caring about things like loyalty and honor and protecting civilians who jump in front of bullets. His eyes found hers, hard and cold. That softness is going to kill him, and I'm going to be the knife. 45 minutes later, Isabella heard the sound of an engine outside. Car door slamming. Footsteps approaching the warehouse entrance. Nico smiled. Showtime. The warehouse door opened and Dominic stepped through. He was alone, as ordered, wearing dark jeans and a black jacket. No visible weapons. But the look on his face, Isabella had seen him angry before, had seen him cold and controlled. This was different. This was fury stripped of its civilized veneer, raw and primal and absolutely terrifying. His eyes found hers across the warehouse, and something in them softened, just for a moment, just long enough for Isabella to see the fear beneath the rage. I'm here, Dominic said, his voice echoing in the empty space. Let her go. Not quite yet. Nico moved behind Isabella, one hand fisting in her hair, the gun pressed to her temple. First, we're going to talk about how this ends. It ends with you dead. Maybe. But you first. Nico jerked his head, and men emerged from the shadows. 6 of them, all armed, all positioned to create a perfect crossfire. You see, Dominic, I learned from your father, too. He taught me that you don't leave anything to chance. You don't assume. You plan for every contingency. Dominic's eyes tracked the gunmen, calculating odds that Isabella knew were impossible. 7 against 1. No cover, no weapons. He was going to die here. The girl is nothing to me, Dominic said, his voice flat. Just someone I was using for leverage against her brother's debts. You want to kill her? Go ahead. But this is between you and me, Nico. Always has been. The words hit Isabella like a physical blow. Using her? Leverage? Was any of it real? But then she saw his eyes, saw the message there, silent and desperate. He was lying, trying to make Nico think she didn't matter, that killing her would gain him nothing. Nico saw it too. He laughed, the sound bouncing off the warehouse walls. Nice try. But I've seen the way you look at her. She matters, Dominic. She's your weakness, and that means she's my weapon. You want me dead? Then do it. But let her go first. She's got nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with this. She's the proof that you're not the cold, calculating Don Daddy tried to raise. You're just a man, Weak, human, vulnerable. Nico's grip tightened in Isabella's hair, making her gasp. When you're gone, when I've taken everything you had, I want the whole city to know why. I want them to see that Dominic Caruso fell because he cared more about some nobody civilian than he did about power. Then you've already lost. Dominic took a step forward, and immediately 6 guns trained on him. He didn't stop. Because power without something worth protecting is just violence, just noise. My father understood that. He built this organization to protect our family, our people, not to feed his own ego. Your father was a dinosaur who died because he trusted the wrong person. Nico's smile was vicious, just like you're going to die because you loved the wrong woman. The word hung in the air, loved, and Isabella's breath caught. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Acknowledgement, acceptance, truth. You're right, Dominic said quietly. I do love her. That's not weakness, Nico. That's the only thing that makes any of this worth doing. Time fractured. Nico's finger tightened on the trigger. Dominic moved impossibly fast, his hand going to the small of his back where the gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Isabella screamed, certain she was about to watch Dominic die. But it wasn't Dominic who fell. One of Nico's gunmen dropped, blood spreading from the hole in his forehead. Then another, then another. Precise, professional shots coming from somewhere in the warehouse rafters. Marco. Dominic had brought backup after all. Chaos erupted. Nico's remaining men scattered, returning fire at targets they couldn't see. Dominic pulled a gun from an ankle holster and dropped behind a concrete pillar. And Nico. Nico dragged Isabella to her feet, using her as a human shield. The gun pressed so hard against her temple she felt the metal grinding against bone. Stand down! Nico shouted over the gunfire. Stand down, or she dies! The shooting stopped. Silence fell, broken only by Isabella's ragged breathing and the drip of blood somewhere in the darkness. Come out, Dominic, Nico called. Come out or I paint the walls with her brain. For a moment, nothing. Then Dominic emerged from behind the pillar, hands raised, gun dangling from one finger. Don't, please. The please broke Isabella's heart. This man, this king of violence, was begging. Drop the gun. Dominic let it fall, the clatter echoing. Now kick it away. He obeyed, the gun skittering across the concrete. Nico backed toward the exit, dragging Isabella with him. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to leave with the girl. You're going to stay here with your dead men and think about how badly you fucked up. And then, when I'm safe, when I'm far away from your reach, I'm going to send you her fingers, one at a time, until you understand what it costs to cross me. Take me instead. Dominic took a step forward. Let her go. Take me. I'll go quietly. I won't fight. Just don't hurt her. And miss the look on your face when you realize you failed to save her? Not a chance. They were at the door now. Outside, Isabella could hear an engine running. Nico was going to get away, was going to take her somewhere Dominic couldn't follow, couldn't save her. She had one chance. One moment before they were gone. Isabella remembered the self-defense class Marcy had dragged her to 3 years ago. The instructor's voice in her head, if someone has a gun to your head and they're moving you, they probably won't shoot. They need you alive for leverage. That's your window. She stopped resisting. Let her body go limp, dead weight in Nico's arms. His grip shifted, adjusting, and for half a second the gun wasn't pressed quite as hard against her skull. Isabella drove her head backward with everything she had, feeling her skull connect with Nico's nose. He howled, his grip loosening, the gun wavering. She twisted, bringing her knee up into his groin with savage force. The gun went off. For a horrible second, Isabella thought she'd been shot, thought she'd feel the pain any moment, feel her life bleeding out onto the concrete. But she was still standing, still breathing, and Nico was staring down at the spreading red stain on his chest, his expression more surprised than pained. He looked up, past Isabella, to where Dominic stood with his backup piece drawn, smoke curling from the barrel. You hesitated, Dominic said, his voice empty. Fatal mistake. Nico's legs gave out. He fell to his knees, then pitched forward, dead before he hit the ground. Isabella stood frozen, covered in blood that wasn't hers, her whole body shaking. Then Dominic was there, pulling her against his chest, his hands in her hair, his voice in her ear. "You're safe. I've got you. You're safe." She buried her face in his jacket and let herself shake apart, let the terror and adrenaline crash through her while he held her together. Men moved around them, Marco and the others securing the scene, checking bodies, making calls. Dominic ignored all of it, his entire focus on the woman in his arms. "I thought I'd lost you," he said roughly. "When he took you, when I got his message, I thought, I know." Isabella pulled back enough to see his face. "But I'm here. We're here." He framed her face with both hands, his eyes searching hers like he was memorizing every detail. "What you did back there, fighting him, that was stupid? Brave." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her temple where the gun had pressed. Gentle kisses, reverent, like he was reclaiming every inch Nico had threatened. So fucking brave. "I wasn't going to let him win. Wasn't going to let him use me to kill you." "Isabella," his voice cracked. "What I said in there, about you being leverage, using you, that was—" "I know, I knew." She pressed her bound hands against his chest, feeling his heart racing. "You were trying to protect me. I know." He looked down at her wrists, and fury flashed across his face. He pulled a knife from his boot and cut the zip ties with one swift motion, then gently rubbed circulation back into her hands. "Boss?" Marco approached, respectful but urgent. "We need to move. Police will be here soon." Dominic nodded but didn't let go of Isabella. "Can you walk?" "I think so." He kept one arm around her waist as they moved toward the exit, supporting her weight when her knees wanted to give out. Outside, 3 black SUVs waited, their engines running. "Take us home," Dominic told Marco, "and make sure we're not followed." "Already done. The scene's being cleaned. As far as the cops will know, this was a gang dispute. No civilian involvement." Dominic helped Isabella into the back of the middle SUV, sliding in beside her. The door closed, and suddenly they were alone in the leather-scented darkness, the city lights streaking past the tinted windows. Isabella leaned against him, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. "Is it over? Is he really dead?" "Yes." Dominic's arm tightened around her shoulders. "It's over. All of it. Nico was the last one. The last threat. So I can go home." "But—" She meant it as a statement, but it came out like a question. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Is that what you want?" Isabella thought about her apartment, her shop, her quiet life of old books and silence. Thought about going back to that existence, to days where nothing happened and nights where she was safe and alone. It sounded unbearable. "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "Everything's changed. I've changed. How do I go back to normal after this? After you?" "You don't." He shifted, turning to look at her directly. In the dim light, his face was all shadows and sharp angles, but his eyes were soft. "Isabella, I need to tell you something. What I said in that warehouse, that you love me." "Yes." No hesitation, no taking it back. "I love you. I know it's insane. I know we barely know each other. I know I have no right to feel this way about someone I've kept prisoner for 2 weeks, but it's true." Isabella's breath caught. "Dominic, let me finish." His hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. "I can give you your life back, your shop, your freedom, your safety. I can set you up somewhere far from here, somewhere Nico's allies can never find you, give you money, protection, a fresh start, whatever you need. But I don't want to." The words came out raw. "I want to be selfish. I want to keep you. Want to wake up every morning with you in my bed. Want to show you my world, the parts that aren't violence and blood. Want to give you everything I have and hope to God it's enough." "That's not selfish," Isabella said softly. "That's honest. It's dangerous. Being with me will always be dangerous. There will always be another Nico, another threat, another war. I can't promise you safety, can't promise you normal." "Good." Isabella squeezed his hand. "Because I don't want normal anymore. Normal is what I had before, and it was just existing, not living. You taught me the difference." Hope flickered in his eyes, fragile and fierce. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want to leave." Don't want to go back to my quiet life pretending I didn't find something real in the middle of all this chaos. She brought their joined hands to her lips, kissing his knuckles. I'm saying I love you too, and I want to see where this goes, danger and all. Isabella. Her name was a prayer on his lips. Then he was kissing her, deep and desperate and full of all the things they couldn't say. She kissed him back, tasting fear and relief and the promise of something that might be forever if they were brave enough to reach for it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic pressed his forehead to hers. This is going to be complicated, he said. I restore broken things for a living. I think I can handle complicated. He laughed, the sound surprising them both. You're impossible. And you're a criminal. I think we're even. The SUV pulled up to the building, and Marco opened the door, carefully not looking at the two of them tangled together in the back seat. Welcome home, miss, he said to Isabella, and this time there was warmth in his voice. Acceptance. Dominic helped her out, his hand steady at her back, and together they entered the building. As the elevator climbed toward the penthouse, Isabella leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, and realized something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't her prison anymore. It was home. With a man who'd killed to protect her, who'd begged for her life, who'd looked at her like she was worth more than all his power and wealth combined. They were broken, both of them, scarred by violence and loss and choices that couldn't be undone. But maybe, Isabella thought as the elevator doors opened onto their floor, broken things could fit together in ways whole things never could. Maybe the cracks were where the light got in. Dominic led Isabella into the penthouse, his hand never leaving the small of her back, as if letting go might make her disappear. The apartment felt different now, no longer a cage but a sanctuary, bathed in the soft glow of city lights filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Elena appeared from the kitchen, took one look at Isabella's blood-stained clothes and pale face, and immediately began fussing in rapid Italian. She's asking if you're hurt, Dominic translated, though his own eyes were doing their own careful inventory of her body, searching for injuries he might have missed. Tell her I'm fine, just tired. Isabella managed a weak smile for the older woman, who looked unconvinced but nodded and retreated to prepare tea. Dominic guided Isabella toward his bedroom, not the guest room she'd been occupying, but his own private space. She noticed the distinction but said nothing, too exhausted to analyze what it meant. The room was massive, decorated in dark woods and deep blues, dominated by a king-size bed that looked like heaven. You need to get cleaned up, Dominic said softly, his thumb brushing a spot of dried blood from her cheek. I'll have Elena bring you something to eat. Stay with me. The words came out before Isabella could stop them, vulnerable and raw. Please. I don't want to be alone right now. Something in his expression softened. I'm not going anywhere. He led her into the bathroom, that same marble sanctuary where she'd stitched his wounds just days ago. The role reversal wasn't lost on either of them. Dominic started the shower, testing the temperature with his hand, then turned to her. Can you manage, or do you need help? Isabella looked down at her trembling hands, at the blood crusted under her fingernails, and felt the enormity of the night crash over her. She'd been kidnapped, held at gunpoint, watched a man die. I don't think I can. Then I'll help. There was nothing predatory in his voice, nothing but gentle concern as he reached for the hem of her sweater. Tell me if you want me to stop. She didn't stop him. Let him peel away the ruined clothes, let him see the bruises forming on her arms where Nico had grabbed her, the raw skin on her wrists from the zip ties. Each new mark made his jaw tighten, but he said nothing, just carefully helped her into the shower's warm spray. He followed her in, still fully dressed, and Isabella would have laughed if she had the energy. Instead, she leaned against him as he shampooed her hair with gentle fingers, as he washed away the blood and fear and violence until the water finally ran clear. I killed a man tonight, she said into the steam-filled silence. I headbutted him, kneed him, and when you shot him, I didn't feel sorry. I felt relieved. What does that make me? Human. Dominic tilted her face up, water streaming between them. It makes you human, Isabella, and a survivor. I watched the light go out of his eyes. I watched him die. I know. I've seen that look on more faces than I can count. His hands framed her face, water droplets clinging to his eyelashes. It doesn't get easier. If it did, we'd be monsters. But you feel it, process it, and keep living. That's all any of us can do. How do you live with it? All the death? All the violence? I tell myself it's necessary, that I'm protecting something bigger than myself. He paused, his expression haunted. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if my father was wrong. If all of this, the power, the empire, the blood, is worth what it costs. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. Isabella pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her palm. What do you think? I think it was worth it because it brought you to me. He kissed her forehead, her temple, her cheek. I think everything I've done, every choice I've made, led to that moment in the street when you threw yourself in front of a bullet for a stranger. And if that was the price, I'd pay it again. Isabella stood on her toes and kissed him, tasting water and something sweeter, hope, maybe, or the promise of redemption. He responded immediately, his arms coming around her, pulling her close as the shower rained down on them both. When they finally broke apart, he turned off the water and wrapped her in a towel so soft it felt like clouds. He found her one of his shirts to sleep in, the fabric hanging nearly to her knees, and settled her into his bed with a tenderness that made her throat tight. I'll be right outside if you need anything, he said, starting to pull away. You said you weren't going anywhere. I meant the apartment. I didn't want to assume. Dominic, she caught his hand. I don't want to be alone, and I don't think you do either. He studied her for a long moment, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. Then he stripped off his wet clothes, pulled on sleep pants, and slid into bed beside her. Isabella curled into him immediately, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders, and for the first time since that gunshot in the street, she felt safe. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness, for coming for me, for not giving up. I would burn the whole city down to keep you safe. His voice rumbled through his chest, absolute and certain. Don't ever doubt that. She fell asleep to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat and didn't dream of warehouses or guns or death. She dreamed of old books and gentle hands and a man who looked at her like she was worth saving. Morning arrived too bright and too early, sunlight streaming through windows Dominic had forgotten to cover. Isabella woke slowly, awareness returning in pieces. She was warm, safe, wrapped around someone who smelled like cedar and expensive soap, someone whose arm was draped possessively across her waist, whose breath stirred her hair with each exhale. She opened her eyes to find Dominic already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You're staring, she murmured, her voice rough with sleep. You're beautiful. No hesitation, no charm, just fact. Especially like this, unguarded. I probably look like hell. You look alive. After last night, that's the most beautiful thing in the world. His thumb traced the bruise on her jaw where Nico had grabbed her. How do you feel? Sore. A little shaky, but better. She shifted closer, seeking his warmth. What happens now? Now? He was quiet for a moment, his hand moving in slow circles on her back. Now I have to deal with the fallout. Nico's death will create a power vacuum. Others might try to challenge me, test my strength. So more danger. Possibly. Probably. He met her eyes. Which is why I'm going to give you a choice, Isabella, right now before things get complicated. I can set you up somewhere safe. New identity, new life. Enough money that you'll never have to worry, or I stay here. With you. Or you stay here and accept everything that comes with it. The danger, the scrutiny, the fact that you'll be associated with me, with my world, and there's no coming back from that. Isabella thought about her old life, her quiet bookshop, her carefully constructed isolation. Thought about the woman she'd been before the bullet, afraid, guilt-ridden, half alive. That woman was gone. The street had killed her as surely as any weapon. I told you last night I wanted to stay. That hasn't changed. You were in shock, traumatized. I need to know you've really thought about this. I have. She pushed up on one elbow, looking down at him. Dominic, I spent 2 years hiding from life because I was afraid of losing someone again. Afraid of the pain that came with caring. And then you happened. This happened. And I realized that safe isn't the same as alive. Being with me is the opposite of safe. I know, but it's real. It's vivid and terrifying and more alive than I've felt in years. She traced the scar above his eyebrow with one finger. I'm not naive. I know what you are, what you do. I know there will be more nights like last night, more danger, more violence. But I also know that I'd rather have one real moment with you than a lifetime of safe, empty days without you. Dominic stared at her like she'd just offered him the world. Then he rolled, pinning her beneath him, careful of her healing shoulder. You're sure? Because once you're part of my world, Isabella, you're mine. I don't share, and I don't let go. Possessive much? You have no idea. His mouth found the sensitive spot below her ear. Say yes. Tell me you're staying. Yes. The word came out breathless as his lips traced down her throat. I'm staying. I'm yours. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Isabella felt the last of her reservations burn away. This was insane. Reckless. Everything rational said she should run as far and fast as she could from this man and his world of violence. But her heart had made its choice, and for once, she was going to listen. They spent the morning in bed, not making love but simply being, talking, touching, learning the landscape of each other. Dominic told her about his father, about growing up in a world where power was currency and weakness was death, about taking over the organization at 25 after his father was killed by a rival family, about the brutal year that followed as he consolidated power and eliminated threats. I had to become someone harder than my father, he said, his fingers tangled with hers. Had to prove I could be just as ruthless, just as unforgiving. For a long time I thought that's all I was, all I could be. And now? Now I have you, and you make me want to be more than just the man who holds power through fear. Isabella told him about Michael, about the accident and the crushing guilt that had defined her life for 2 years, about withdrawing from everyone, throwing herself into work, existing instead of living. He wouldn't have wanted that for you, Dominic said gently. From what you've told me, he loved life too much to want you to waste yours mourning him. I know, I knew it even then, but knowing and feeling are different things. They are. He kissed her knuckles. But you're feeling now, living now. He'd be glad of that, I think. He'd probably tell me I was insane for falling for a mob boss. Probably. But then your brother apparently had a gambling problem that put you on my radar long before you jumped in front of that bullet. Isabella froze. What? Dominic's expression shifted, becoming guarded. Your brother owed money to someone in my organization. It was flagged because Hart isn't a common name, and when I ran your background after the shooting, the connection came up. You knew? Her voice came out small. When you said I was leverage against my brother's debts in that warehouse, that wasn't just a lie to Nico? The debt was real. Michael borrowed $50,000 from one of my lenders 6 months before he died. He'd paid back about half when the accident happened. Dominic sat up, clearly choosing his words carefully. But no, Isabella, I wasn't holding you for the debt. I didn't even know about the connection until after I'd already decided to keep you safe. But the debt still exists. Existed, past tense. I cleared it the day after you were shot. He caught her hands when she tried to pull away. Listen to me. Your brother made some bad choices, got in over his head, but his debt died with him, and even if it hadn't, I would never have used it against you. That's not why you're here. Then why didn't you tell me? Because it didn't matter. Because you'd already been through enough without adding guilt over money your brother borrowed. His grip tightened. Because I didn't want you to think for even a second that my feelings for you had anything to do with some debt or obligation. Isabella wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at him for keeping secrets, but looking into his eyes, she saw only honesty and a fear that she'd use this as an excuse to leave. No more secrets, she said finally. If we're doing this, if I'm staying, I need you to be honest with me about everything. Everything? Everything that matters. I'm not asking for your business dealings or your organization's secrets, but things that affect me, things that involve my past or my family. Those I need to know." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I should have told you about Michael's debt. Should have been upfront from the beginning. I'm not used to answering to anyone, Isabella. Not used to considering someone else's feelings in my decisions. But I'll try. For you, I'll try. That's all I'm asking." She kissed him softly. "Now, are there any other secrets I should know about?" He hesitated, and she saw him weighing something. "There's one more thing. About Nico." "What about him?" "He wasn't working alone. Someone higher up in a rival organization was funding him, giving him resources, planning to use him as a puppet boss once I was dead." Dominic's jaw hardened. "Which means, even though Nico's gone, the threat isn't completely over. I still need to find out who his benefactor was and deal with them." "How do you deal with something like that?" "Carefully, methodically, and probably violently." He studied her face, looking for signs of fear or revulsion. "Does that bother you?" "Ask me again after I've had coffee, and I'll give you a better answer." She climbed out of bed, feeling the various aches and pains from last night's ordeal. "Right now, I just need to feel human again." She found clothes, her own clothes, she realized with surprise, brought from her apartment at some point. The jeans and sweater felt like armor, something normal in this surreal new life. When she emerged from the bathroom, she found Dominic dressed in dark slacks and a white button-down, looking every inch the powerful businessman rather than the criminal kingpin she knew him to be. "I have a meeting this morning," he said, checking his phone with a frown. "Marco and the others need to be briefed on what happened last night, and we need to start tracking Nico's connections. So I'll be locked in the apartment again." "No." The answer surprised them both. "No, I think those days are over. You're not my prisoner anymore, Isabella. He seemed to struggle with the word. "You're my partner. If you want to be." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means you can come and go as you please. The guards will be there for your protection, not to keep you trapped. It means you can go back to your shop if you want, see your friend, live your life. With precautions, of course. A security detail, secure transportation. But you're free." Isabella felt something tight in her chest loosen. "Just like that?" "Just like that." He crossed to her, tilting her chin up with one finger. "I'm not your captor anymore. And I don't want you to stay because you have no choice. I want you to stay because you want to be here." "I do want to be here. But I also want to see Marcy. Want to check on the shop. Want to figure out how to integrate my old life with this new one." "Then we'll figure it out together." He kissed her forehead. "After my meeting, we'll go to your shop. I'll meet this friend of yours who's been worried sick about you." "Dominic, she can't know about what you are, what you do. She won't hear it from me. As far as the world is concerned, I'm Dominic Caruso, real estate developer and venture capitalist, which is technically true, just not the whole truth." "You own legitimate businesses?" "Several. The organization isn't just crime, Isabella. We have investments, properties, companies that operate completely above board. That's how modern organized crime works. You hide in plain sight, mix the legal with the illegal until no one can tell which is which. That's actually kind of brilliant in a terrifying way. My father's legacy. He understood that you can't survive on crime alone. You need legitimate fronts, real businesses that employ real people and generate real income. That way, when the authorities come looking, they find nothing but paperwork and tax returns." A knock at the door interrupted them. Marco entered at Dominic's call, his expression grim. "We have a problem, boss. The Italians are asking for a sit-down. They want to discuss Nico's death and what it means for the territories." The Italians, meaning the old-school mafia families from the East Coast. Isabella had heard about them in movies, but never imagined they were real, let alone that she'd be standing in a room while they were discussed like weather patterns. "When?" Dominic's voice had gone cold, businesslike. "Tomorrow night, neutral ground. They're suggesting the Venetian Club." "Of course they are. That place has been neutral ground for 30 years. Dominic ran a hand through his hair, his mind clearly racing through implications and strategies. "Tell them I agree, but I choose my own security detail, and they keep their number to 5 men plus their boss." "Already done. They accepted the terms." Marco's eyes flicked to Isabella, uncertainty crossing his features. What about, she stays with me, here, with full security? Dominic's tone brooked no argument. I'm not taking any chances until we know who is backing Nico. Understood. Marco nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Isabella waited until he was gone before speaking. What's a sit-down? A meeting, a negotiation. The Italians control a lot of the East Coast operations, and they've been eyeing my territory for years. Nico's death might make them think I'm vulnerable, that now's the time to push. Dominic's expression was hard. I need to show them I'm not. How do you do that? By being calm, controlled, stronger than they expect. He pulled her close, seeming to need the contact. By showing them that Nico's betrayal didn't weaken me, it just removed a cancer from my organization. This world, Isabella said softly. It's all power plays and positioning, isn't it? At the highest levels, yes. Everything is about perception, about making your enemies think twice before moving against you. He touched her face gently, the tenderness stark against the coldness in his voice when discussing business. But you don't need to worry about that. That's my world, my problem. If I'm staying, it becomes my problem too. Not like this. I'll never ask you to be part of that side of things. But I already am. The moment I jumped in front of that bullet, I became part of it. Isabella pulled back to look at him directly. I'm not naive, Dominic. I know what you're going to that meeting to do. You're going to threaten them, or make deals, or do whatever it takes to keep your power. And I know that my being here, my being with you, makes me a target, makes me leverage. So don't protect me from the truth. I'd rather know what I'm dealing with. He studied her for a long moment, something like respect growing in his eyes. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who'd want to close their eyes to the ugly parts. Who'd want to pretend this was a normal relationship, that I was a normal man. He traced her jawline with his thumb. But you're stronger than that, braver. Or stupider. The jury's still out. That earned her a rare, genuine laugh. Come on, let me show you something before I have to deal with all this. He led her through the apartment to a room she hadn't noticed before, hidden behind what looked like a wall panel. Inside was an office, not the study with the books, but a true command center. Multiple monitors lined one wall showing security feeds from various locations. A massive desk held several computers, and filing cabinets lined another wall. This is where I actually work, Dominic explained. The study is for appearances, for meetings with people who don't need to know the full extent of things. But this, he gestured around the room. This is where I run the organization. Why are you showing me this? Because you asked for honesty, for no more secrets. He pulled out a leather chair, gesturing for her to sit. This is who I am, Isabella. This is what my life looks like. And if you're going to be part of it, you should see all of it. Isabella sat slowly, looking at the screens showing warehouses, clubs, what looked like shipping containers at a dock. What am I looking at? My legitimate businesses. The real estate holdings, the shipping company, the nightclubs. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. And if you look closer, the less legitimate ones. The gambling operations, the protection rackets, let's call them import-export businesses that don't exactly file proper customs paperwork. You're giving me a tour of your criminal empire. I'm showing you my life. All of it. No filters, no pretense. His eyes held hers. And then you can decide if you really want to stay. Isabella looked at the screens, at the evidence of Dominic's power and influence, at the scope of an organization that touched hundreds of lives and generated millions of dollars. She should be horrified, should be running for the door. Instead, she felt oddly calm. This was the truth, laid bare. No more wondering, no more suspecting, just reality, stark and uncompromising. I'm staying, she said finally, but I have conditions. That surprised him. Conditions? I won't be involved in the criminal side of things. I don't want to know details about the illegal operations. I'll be with you, support you, but I won't participate in or be complicit in crime. She stood, meeting his eyes. I need that boundary, Dominic. Need to keep some part of myself separate from that world. That's fair. And I'm going back to work, to my shop. I'll have security, I'll take precautions, but I'm not giving up who I am just to be with you. I wouldn't ask you to. And when you do things, violent things, necessary things in your world, I don't want to know the details unless they directly affect me. Can you live with that? He was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he nodded. Yes, I can live with that. You draw your boundaries, keep your conscience clear, and I'll do what needs to be done to keep us both safe. Even if that means killing people. Even then, no hesitation, no apology. I won't lie to you about who I am, Isabella. I will do whatever it takes to protect what's mine, but I'll keep the blood off your hands. That's a promise. She circled the desk, coming to stand in front of him. I think we're both a little crazy. Definitely. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. But we're crazy together. That has to count for something. Everything, she whispered. It counts for everything. They stood like that for a long moment, two broken people finding something whole in each other's arms. Then Dominic's phone buzzed, shattering the intimacy. He checked it with a sigh. Marco's ready. I need to go deal with this. I'll be here when you get back. Promise? The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. Promise. I'm not going anywhere, Dominic. Not anymore. He kissed her once, deep and thorough, like he was memorizing the taste of her. Then he left, and Isabella was alone in the command center of a criminal empire, trying to figure out how her quiet life of books and regret had transformed into this. She should be terrified, should be questioning every choice that led her here. But as she looked at the city spreading out below the windows, at the evidence of Dominic's power surrounding her, she felt something else entirely. She felt alive. Isabella spent the afternoon exploring her new reality. She wandered through the penthouse with fresh eyes, no longer a prisoner cataloging her cage, but a woman trying to understand the life she'd chosen. Every room told a story about the man who lived here. The expensive art that suggested culture, the well-stocked bar that hinted at lonely nights, the gym equipment that spoke of discipline and control. But it was the small details that caught her attention. The book of poetry on his nightstand, dog-eared and annotated in Italian. The photograph tucked in a drawer, a younger Dominic with an older man who had to be his father, both of them smiling at something off-camera. The closet full of perfectly tailored suits that cost more than most people's cars, but also worn jeans and faded t-shirts that suggested he wasn't always the untouchable Don. He was a contradiction, brutal and gentle, controlled and passionate, a killer who kissed her like she was something sacred, and somehow, impossibly, she'd fallen in love with him. The realization hit her as she stood in his closet, holding one of his shirts to her face and breathing in his scent. She loved him, not despite what he was, but including it. The darkness and the light, the violence and the tenderness, all of it woven together into a man who'd looked at her like she was worth dying for. Miss Hart? Elena's voice pulled her from her thoughts. The older woman stood in the doorway, her expression softer than usual. I made lunch. You should eat. Thank you, Elena. Isabella followed her to the kitchen, where a spread of food waited: fresh bread, pasta salad, grilled vegetables, and fruit. This is too much. You need strength. Last night was... Elena's voice caught, and Isabella realized the woman had been genuinely worried. Mr. Caruso, he was very scared. I have worked for the family for 20 years, and I have never seen him like that. So afraid. You've known him a long time then. Since he was a boy. I knew his father too. Elena poured them both coffee, settling into a chair across from Isabella with an ease that suggested Dominic had given permission for this conversation. Matteo Caruso was a hard man. Fair, but hard. He raised his son to be strong, to never show weakness. That must have been difficult, for Dominic, I mean. Very difficult, especially after his mother died when he was 12. After that, it was just him and his father and this world of violence and power. Elena's eyes were distant, remembering. Matteo loved his son, but he loved the organization more. He wanted Dominic to be stronger than he was, harder, more ruthless. I think he was afraid that if Dominic was too soft, the others would destroy him after Matteo was gone. And was he right? No. Dominic is strong in ways his father never understood. He has his father's will and discipline, but also something Matteo lacked, the ability to inspire loyalty rather than just fear. Elena reached across the table, patting Isabella's hand. And now he has you. Someone who makes him remember he is not just the Don, that he is also a man. I don't know if that's a good thing, given what he is, what he does. It is the best thing. Elena's voice was firm. A man who is only violence becomes a monster. Dominic has walked that edge for years, but you pull him back. Give him something to fight for beyond power. Isabella thought about that as she ate, about the weight of being someone's anchor to humanity. It felt too large, too important. She was just a woman who'd made an impulsive decision in a street full of gunfire. How had that transformed into being responsible for a man's soul? She was still pondering it when her phone rang, her real phone, not the one Dominic had given her for monitored calls. Marcy's name flashed on the screen. Bells! Her friend's voice was equal parts relief and exasperation. Oh my God, finally! I've been trying to reach you for days. How's your aunt? Are you okay? When are you coming back? Isabella's throat tightened with guilt. The lies Dominic had constructed felt heavier now. I'm fine, Mars. Actually, I'm back in the city. I was going to come by the shop tomorrow. Tomorrow? Why not today? I'm here now, and honestly, I could use the help. We got in 3 boxes of estate sale books that need cataloging, and Mrs. Chen has called twice about her wedding album restoration. I'll be there tomorrow, I promise. I have some things to take care of first. Things involving that mysterious family emergency you've been so vague about? Marcy's tone shifted, becoming concerned. Bells, are you really okay? You sound different. I am different. A lot has happened. Isabella took a breath. I'll explain tomorrow. All of it. Or as much as I can. Now you're scaring me. Don't be scared. I'm fine. Actually, I'm better than fine. I know that probably doesn't make sense, but it will. Tomorrow, okay? After she hung up, Isabella sat staring at her phone, trying to figure out how to explain her new life to her best friend. How did you tell someone that you'd fallen in love with a mafia boss? That you'd been shot and kidnapped and had watched a man die and somehow come through it all deciding to stay in that world? You didn't. You couldn't. You just had to hope they loved you enough to accept it without understanding. Dominic returned as the sun was setting, painting the city in shades of orange and gold. Isabella heard him before she saw him, his voice in the hallway, speaking Italian with Marco, the tone clipped and businesslike. Then the door opened, and he was there, tension radiating from every line of his body. Bad meeting? She asked from her position curled on the couch. Complicated meeting. He shrugged out of his jacket, loosening his tie. But nothing I can't handle. How was your afternoon? Enlightening. Elena told me stories about you as a kid. That made him pause, something almost like embarrassment crossing his face. Did she? I'll have to have a word with her about sharing family secrets. Don't you dare! I liked learning about young Dominic, who apparently tried to run away from home at 14 and made it all the way to the bus station before his father's men brought him back. In my defense, I was going through a rebellious phase. He crossed to her, some of the tension leaving his shoulders as he sat beside her. My father had just ordered a hit on a man who'd stolen from us. I watched it happen, watched the life leave his eyes, and I decided I wanted no part of this world. What changed your mind? My father found me at the bus station. Didn't yell, didn't punish me, just sat down next to me and said, "You think running makes you free? It makes you prey. In this world, you're either the wolf or the sheep, Dominic. And our family has always been wolves." He stared at his hands, at the scars on his knuckles. He was right. I was naive to think I could just walk away from what we are. You were 14. You were supposed to be naive. Not in my world. In my world, 14 is old enough to understand what power costs and what happens when you don't have it. He looked at her then, and she saw the weight of all those years in his eyes. I don't regret who I became. Can't afford to. But sometimes I wonder what kind of man I would have been if I'd gotten on that bus. Isabella took his hand, threading their fingers together. You would have been someone else entirely, maybe better in some ways. But you wouldn't have been the man who looked at a stranger and saw someone worth protecting, who built an empire but still reads poetry, who's capable of such violence but touches me like I'm made of glass. You see too much good in me, and you see too little. She shifted closer, her free hand coming up to cup his cheek. You're not a monster, Dominic. Monsters don't feel guilty about the lives they take. Don't question their choices. Don't try to protect people who throw themselves in front of bullets. I've done terrible things, Isabella, things that would make you run if you knew the details. Then it's a good thing I established that boundary, isn't it? I don't need to know every sin to love the sinner. The word hung between them. Love. She'd said it before, in the heat of the moment, but this was different. This was calm and clear and chosen. You loved me. He said it like he was testing the words, like he couldn't quite believe them. I do. God help me, I do. God left this neighborhood a long time ago. But there was wonder in his voice, and when he kissed her, it tasted like gratitude and disbelief and desperate hope. They lost themselves in each other for a while, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows, the world forgotten. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic pressed his forehead to hers. I need to tell you about tomorrow night, about the sit-down. Isabella's stomach tightened, but she nodded. Okay. The Italians want to discuss territory divisions. They're claiming that Nico's betrayal proves my organization is weak, that I'm losing control. They want me to cede them 3 neighborhoods in South Verona and access to the port operations. And you're going to refuse. I'm going to tell them to go to hell. His voice was hard. Those neighborhoods have been ours for 30 years. The port access controls half the shipping in and out of this city. Giving them up would be the same as admitting defeat. So what happens when you refuse? One of 3 things. They accept my answer and back down, which is unlikely. They try to negotiate for something smaller, which is more likely. Or they decide to take what they want by force, which would mean war. War. The word felt heavy on her tongue. Real war. With casualties and bodies, yes. Gang wars are ugly, Isabella. People die. Innocents get caught in the crossfire. Buildings burn. It's not like the movies. It's chaos and blood and economic damage that takes years to recover from. Can you avoid it? I'm going to try. But I won't give up what's ours out of fear. That would be worse than war. It would be slow death, one concession at a time, until we have nothing left. Isabella understood the impossible position he was in. Show weakness, and enemies would circle like sharks. Stand firm and risk a conflict that could destroy everything. There was no good answer, just the least bad option. What do you need from me? She asked quietly. Just to be here when I get back. To remind me why I'm fighting so hard to protect what we've built. He stood, pulling her to her feet. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her back to the office, the command center he'd shown her earlier. But this time he pulled up files on one of the computers, detailed reports with names and photographs and numbers that made her head spin. This is my organization. Everyone who works for me, from the street-level guys collecting protection money to the high-level operators managing the legitimate businesses. He scrolled through the files, and Isabella saw hundreds of names. Most of them are good people, Isabella. People with families, with kids in school, with mortgages and car payments and normal lives. They just happen to work in a business that exists outside the law. You're showing me this because if I give in to the Italians' demands, these people suffer. The neighborhoods they want, those territories employ 200 of my people. Their families depend on that income. And the port access controls supply chains for a dozen legitimate businesses that employ thousands more. So this isn't just about pride. It's about protecting people. It's always about protecting people. That's what my father never fully understood. Power isn't the goal, it's the tool. What matters is what you do with it. He closed the files, turning to face her. I'm telling you this so you understand that tomorrow night isn't just a pissing contest between old men. It's about protecting an organization that supports thousands of families, legal and otherwise. Isabella processed that, trying to reconcile the image of the violent criminal with the man who was genuinely concerned about employment numbers. Your world is more complicated than I thought. Most things are, when you look close enough. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. But you need to understand what's at stake. If things go badly tomorrow, if the Italians decide to push, you'll be safest here, with Marco and a full security detail. You're trying to protect me again. Always. That's not going to change. He kissed her temple. But I also trust you to be smart, to take precautions, to listen when Marco tells you something isn't safe. I will. I promise. She pulled back to look at him. But Dominic? Come back to me. Whatever happens in that meeting, whatever you have to do, come back. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. They spent the evening in comfortable domesticity that felt surreal given the circumstances. Dinner at the massive dining table, just the two of them, talking about everything and nothing. Isabella told him about her favorite books, about the satisfaction of restoring something broken into something whole again. He told her about the legitimate side of his business, about properties he was developing and investments he was considering. For a few hours, they were just two people falling in love, and the violence and danger felt distant, theoretical. But reality came crashing back when Marco called late that night with news that changed everything. Isabella watched Dominic's expression harden as he listened, watched him transform from the man who'd been laughing at her story about a customer who'd brought in a cookbook held together with duct tape into the cold, controlled Don who ruled Verona's underworld. When? He asked. How many? Jesus. Okay. Lock down all the businesses on that block. I want eyes everywhere. And find out who ordered it. I don't care what it takes, Marco. Someone just declared war, and I want to know who. He ended the call and stood motionless for a long moment, his back to Isabella, his shoulders rigid with tension. What happened? She almost didn't want to know. One of our gambling operations was hit. 3 of my men dead, the place shot up, and a message spray-painted on the wall. He turned, and she saw fury in his eyes. The Italians didn't wait for the sit-down. They're making their move now. So there's going to be a war. There already is. He moved to his office, Isabella following. He pulled up security feeds and she saw the aftermath. Shattered windows, bodies covered with sheets, police lights painting everything in red and blue. They hit us first, which means they want me coming to that meeting tomorrow from a position of weakness. Want me angry and off balance. Are you? Off balance? No, I'm focused. He was already making calls, his voice clipped and commanding. Marco, I want retaliation hits on 3 of their operations. Nothing lethal. I don't want to escalate to killing their people yet. But make it hurt. Make it expensive. Yes, tonight. I don't care if they're expecting it. That's the point. He made 4 more calls in rapid succession, each one colder and more calculated than the last. Isabella watched him orchestrate what was essentially a military operation, deploying men and resources with the precision of a general. This was the man his father had raised, ruthless, strategic, willing to do whatever it took. When he finally stopped, setting his phone down with controlled force, he looked exhausted. You should get some sleep, Isabella said softly. You have a long day tomorrow. I won't be able to sleep, not with this happening. He gestured at the monitors showing his men mobilizing across the city. Not knowing my people are out there risking their lives. Then I'll stay up with you. Isabella, you don't have to. I want to. She took his hand, leading him away from the monitors. You can watch those screens all night and drive yourself crazy. Or you can come with me and let Marco handle the details. You trust him, right? With my life. Then trust him with this. For a few hours, at least. She pulled him toward the bedroom. Come on. You don't have to sleep, but you should at least try to rest. To her surprise, he followed. They lay in bed together, still fully clothed, her head on his chest, and his arm around her shoulders. She could feel the tension thrumming through him, could hear his heart beating too fast. Tell me about the bookshop, he said after a while. About what you love about restoration. Isabella understood what he was asking for, a distraction, something normal and peaceful to focus on instead of the violence unfolding across the city. So she talked, told him about the satisfaction of carefully separating pages that had been stuck together for decades, about matching leather for rebinding, about the detective work involved in researching a book's history. There's something almost meditative about it, she said. The patience it requires, the attention to detail. Every book is a puzzle, and solving it is its own reward. It suits you. That kind of careful, methodical work. His hand stroked through her hair, the motion soothing. I can see you bent over some ancient tome, completely absorbed. It's not exciting, not like your world. Thank God for that. Exciting usually means someone's shooting at me. He was quiet for a moment. What made you want to do that? Book restoration? My grandmother. She had a library full of old books, and she taught me how to care for them when I was young. After she died, she left me her collection and enough money to open a shop. Isabella smiled at the memory. I think she knew I'd need something quiet and absorbing after Michael died. Something to pour myself into that wouldn't hurt. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. She'd have liked you, I think. A book-loving grandmother approving of a mob boss? I doubt that. She always said people were like books. Some were beautiful on the outside but empty within. Others looked damaged and worn, but contained the most amazing stories if you took the time to read them carefully. Isabella pressed a kiss to his chest. You're the second kind. His arms tightened around her. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They dozed eventually, a light sleep interrupted by phone calls and updates. Marco reported successful hits on 3 Italian operations, no casualties, but significant property damage and financial loss. The message was clear. Dominic Caruso doesn't back down. By morning, the immediate crisis had stabilized into an uneasy standoff. Both sides had drawn blood, and now they'd see what the sit-down brought. Isabella woke to find Dominic already up and dressed, standing at the window watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of pink and gold. He looked like he hadn't slept at all, his jaw shadowed with stubble, his eyes tired but alert. Morning, she said, her voice rough with sleep. Morning. He didn't turn from the window. I'm sorry about last night, about bringing that violence into our home. This is your life. Our life now. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. She joined him at the window, slipping under his arm. What time is the meeting? 7 tonight. Marco's arranging security now. 3 cars, 8 men, all heavily armed. He looked down at her. You're staying here. That's not negotiable. I wasn't going to argue. I know when I'm out of my depth. She turned in his arms to face him. But I will be worried. So promise me you'll be careful. I'm always careful. Promise me anyway. I promise. He kissed her softly. And when this is over, when things settle down, I'm taking you somewhere. Somewhere far from here, where we can pretend to be normal for a while. Like a vacation. Like a honeymoon, maybe. The words were barely a whisper, tentative and hopeful. Isabella's heart stuttered. Dominic, I'm not proposing. Not yet. Not while things are this chaotic. He cupped her face in his hands. But I want you to know that's where my head is. Where my heart is. I want forever with you, Isabella Hart. However much forever we can steal from this violent world. Tears pricked her eyes. I want that too. Good. Then we have something to fight for. He kissed her once more, deep and claiming, then pulled away. I need to go. Final preparations for tonight. I'll be here, waiting. She watched him leave, Marco falling into step beside him, and felt fear settle into her stomach like a stone. Tonight could change everything. Could end in peace or war, in Dominic coming home or not coming home at all. Isabella spent the day trying to distract herself. She called Marcy and rescheduled their meeting for the next day, claiming she'd caught a cold. She ate lunch without tasting it. She tried to read but couldn't focus on the words. Finally, as evening approached, she found herself back in Dominic's office, watching the security feeds like they might tell her something useful. Elena found her there, brought her tea she didn't drink, and sat beside her in companionable silence. He will be fine, the older woman said eventually. I have seen Dominic walk through fire and come out stronger. He is his father's son. That's what worries me. His father died in this world, didn't he? Yes, but Dominic is smarter than Matteo was. More careful, and now he has something his father never had, a reason beyond power to stay alive. Elena patted her hand. You give him that reason, so he will come home. Isabella wanted to believe it, needed to believe it, so she nodded and tried to have faith in the man she'd chosen to love. 7 o'clock came and went. Isabella watched the monitors, watched Dominic's convoy leave the building, 3 black SUVs moving through the city like sharks through water. She tracked their progress until they disappeared from her range of cameras, heading toward neutral ground and a meeting that would determine their future. Then there was nothing to do but wait. 8 o'clock came and went with no word. Isabella paced the penthouse like a caged animal, her phone clutched in one hand, willing it to ring. Elena had given up trying to get her to eat or rest and simply sat in the living room, her rosary beads clicking softly as she prayed in Italian. By 9 o'clock, Isabella's nerves were stretched to breaking. She kept imagining worst-case scenarios, Dominic walking into an ambush, the Italians deciding negotiation was pointless, gunfire erupting in what was supposed to be neutral ground. Her shoulder ached where the old bullet wound had healed, a phantom reminder of how quickly violence could erupt. At 9:30, her phone finally rang. Marco's name flashed on the screen. Is he okay? Isabella didn't bother with hello. He's fine. We're on our way back now. Marco's voice was tight with tension. But, Miss Hart, there's something you should know. The meeting didn't go well. Isabella's stomach dropped. What happened? The Italians weren't interested in negotiating. They made demands, and when the boss refused, their leader, Carlo Vitale, made threats. Said the hit last night was just the beginning. That either Dominic gives them what they want, or they'll take it over his dead body. So it's war. Not yet. The boss played it smart, told them they had 24 hours to reconsider, or he'd make their operations in this city impossible. He was calm, controlled, everything they didn't expect after last night's hits. There was a note of pride in Marco's voice. But yes, Miss Hart, if they don't back down, it's war. How long until you're back? 20 minutes? Maybe less. He paused. The boss asked me to tell you he's fine, that everything's under control. He didn't want you to worry. Too late for that, Isabella thought as she ended the call. She'd been worrying since the moment he'd left, and she wouldn't stop until she could see him with her own eyes, touch him, confirm that he was really safe. She stood at the window watching the street below, and exactly 19 minutes later, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the building. She watched Dominic emerge from the middle vehicle, surrounded by his guards, moving with that controlled grace that suggested nothing was wrong. But she knew him well enough now to see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set in that particular way that meant he was furious but containing it. She met him at the door. He walked in, saw her standing there, and something in his expression cracked. He crossed to her in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I'm okay, he murmured into her hair. I'm here. I'm okay. Marco told me what happened, about Vitale's threats. Of course he did. Dominic pulled back enough to look at her face, his hands framing her jaw. I'm sorry. I wanted to spare you the details. We agreed. No more protecting me from reality. She searched his eyes, seeing exhaustion and anger, and something else. A deep, bone-weary frustration. Tell me everything. So he did. He led her to the couch and told her about the meeting at the Venetian Club, about Carlo Vitale and his underboss sitting across from Dominic, with smug expressions and impossible demands, about how they'd claimed Nico had been working for them, that they'd been planning this takeover for months. They thought I'd be weak after Nico's betrayal, thought I'd be so afraid of war that I'd just hand over everything my father built. His voice was hard, cold. They miscalculated. So what happens now? Now I show them exactly what a mistake they made. He stood, moving to the window, his hands shoved in his pockets. I've got people working on finding their vulnerabilities, their suppliers, their protection rackets, their weak spots. When I strike back, it won't be random hits on gambling operations. It'll be surgical, devastating. I'm going to make them regret ever setting foot in my city. Isabella heard the promise of violence in his voice and felt that now familiar conflict, horror at what he was planning, mixed with understanding that in his world, showing mercy meant showing weakness. And weakness got you killed. How long do you think this will last, if it comes to actual war? Days, weeks maybe. He turned back to her, his expression grim. Wars are expensive, Isabella, in money, in men, in the attention they bring from law enforcement. Neither side wants a prolonged conflict, so it'll be brutal and fast, each side trying to hurt the other badly enough that they sue for peace. And the people who get hurt in the crossfire? The innocents? I'll do everything I can to minimize that, but I can't promise there won't be collateral damage. There always is. His voice gentled. Which is why I need you to stay safe. Stay here, or if you absolutely have to go out, take a full security detail. No exceptions. For how long? Until this is over, however long that takes. He came back to her, kneeling in front of the couch so they were eye level. I know you wanted to go back to your shop, wanted to see Marcy. But Isabella, these people have already shown they're willing to kill my men. If they found out about you, if they realized how much you mean to me, I'd be leverage, I know. She touched his face, feeling the stubble rough under her palm. I'll stay put. I'll be careful. But Dominic, you have to promise me something too. Anything. Don't let this consume you. Don't let the need for victory turn you into someone you're not. She saw him start to protest and pressed her fingers to his lips. I know you have to be ruthless. Have to be the Don, the leader, the man who makes hard choices. But don't forget to be the man who reads poetry and shows me old photographs and kisses me like I'm precious. Don't let Vitale take that away. His eyes closed, and when he spoke, his voice was rough. You're asking me to be two different people. I'm asking you to be whole. To remember that you're not just the organization, you're also the man I love. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. Promise me you'll come back from this war, Dominic. Not just alive, but still you. I promise. He kissed her softly. Though I can't guarantee I'll be undamaged. We're both damaged. That's not new. She smiled against his lips. But we heal each other. That's what matters. They stayed like that for a long moment, finding peace in each other while chaos brewed outside their walls. Then Dominic's phone rang, the first of what would be dozens of calls that night as he coordinated his response to Vitale's threats. Isabella watched him transform back into the Don, watched him make decisions that would affect hundreds of lives with the same calm precision he brought to everything. She made coffee that went cold, brought him food he barely touched, and simply existed as a quiet presence in the storm of violence he was orchestrating. Around 3 a.m, after a particularly heated call with one of his lieutenants, Dominic finally set his phone down and rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. Go to bed, Isabella said from her corner of the office where she'd been reading. You need rest. Can't. Too much to coordinate. Vitale's deadline is in... He checked his watch. 16 hours. I need to have everything in place before then. You need to be sharp. That means sleep. She stood crossing to him. Come on, even 2 hours will help. Isabella, I'll wake you if anything urgent happens, but right now, you're going to burn out before the actual fighting even starts. She tugged on his hand. Please. For me. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded in defeat. 2 hours. That's it. They went to bed still clothed, too exhausted for anything but sleep. Isabella curled into his side and felt him relax incrementally, his breathing deepening as exhaustion finally claimed him. She stayed awake longer, watching his face in the dim light from the windows, memorizing the line of his jaw and the way his eyelashes cast shadows on his cheeks. This beautiful, dangerous man who'd crashed into her life and changed everything. She'd saved him once, in a street full of bullets. Now she'd save him again, in whatever way she could, even if it was just by being here, by reminding him what he was fighting for. She must have dozed eventually, because she woke to gray dawn light in an empty bed. Panic seized her until she heard his voice from the other room, low and controlled, speaking Italian in rapid-fire sentences. The war had officially begun. Isabella found him in the office, surrounded by screens showing various locations across the city. Marco was there too, along with 2 other men she vaguely recognized from the security detail. They all looked up when she entered, their conversation dying. I'll call you back, Dominic said into his phone, then ended the call. You should still be sleeping. So should you. 2 hours wasn't nearly enough. She looked at the screens, at the men's tense expressions. What happened? Vitale made his move an hour ago. Hit 3 of our locations simultaneously, 2 warehouses and a social club. No casualties on our side, but significant property damage. Dominic's voice was ice cold. He's trying to provoke me into a hasty response. And are you going to respond hastily? No, I'm going to respond precisely. He gestured to one of the screens showing a nondescript building. That's Vitale's main counting house in the financial district, where he processes all his cash from the various operations. My people have been watching it for 3 days. We know their security, their routines, their vulnerabilities. You're going to hit it. I'm going to empty it. Every dollar, every ledger, every piece of evidence of how he moves money. And then I'm going to make sure the IRS gets an anonymous tip about undeclared income. He smiled, and it was predatory. Vitale can survive a gang war. He can't survive a federal investigation. Isabella understood the brilliance of it. Violence met with strategy. Force met with intelligence. This was Dominic at his best, using every tool available, not just the obvious ones. When? She asked. Tonight, after dark. Marco's team will handle the logistics while I take a meeting with some of Vitale's allies who are having second thoughts about this war. He looked at her, and some of the coldness left his expression. It's going to be a long day. Are you okay with that? Are you asking permission to work? I'm asking if you'll be okay here, essentially alone, while I'm out risking my life. He said it bluntly, without softening the reality. No, I won't be okay. I'll be terrified every second you're gone. She crossed to him, aware of the other men watching but not caring. But I'll survive it, because I trust you to be smart and careful and to come back to me. So go. Do what you need to do. I'll be here. He kissed her in front of his men, claiming and tender all at once, then pulled away. Keep your phone on. I'll text you updates when I can. Then he was gone, taking Marco and half the security detail with him, leaving Isabella in the penthouse with 2 guards outside and nothing to do but wait and worry. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Isabella tried to distract herself. She called Marcy and postponed their meeting again, claiming her cold had gotten worse. She attempted to read but couldn't focus. She even tried to work on a book restoration she'd brought from the shop, but her hands were too unsteady. Finally, she gave up and just sat in the office, watching the security feeds and waiting for news. Elena brought lunch and dinner, both of which Isabella barely touched. The older woman didn't comment, just sat with her for a while, her presence a comfort. As darkness fell, Isabella's phone buzzed with a text from Dominic. Phase 1 complete. Meeting went better than expected. 3 of Vitale's allies are pulling out. He's weaker than he knows. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by renewed anxiety. Phase 1 was complete, but Phase 2, the counting house hit, was still to come. That's where the real danger lay. Another hour passed, then another. Isabella's nerves were screaming by the time her phone rang at 10:30. It's done! Dominic's voice was tight with controlled excitement. We got everything. Cash, ledgers, computer servers. Vitale's financial operations are crippled, and the feds are getting a very detailed package tomorrow morning. Are you okay? Is anyone hurt? 2 minor injuries, nothing serious. We're heading back now. He paused. Isabella, this changes everything. Vitale can't fight a war on 2 fronts, against me and against federal investigators. He'll have to sue for peace or risk losing everything. So it's over? Not yet. But soon. Very soon. His voice softened. I'm coming home, baby. Wait for me. She did. She stood at the window watching the street below until she saw the familiar convoy of black SUVs pull up. Watched Dominic emerge flanked by his men, all of them moving with the confidence of a successful operation. And when he walked through the door 15 minutes later, she launched herself at him, not caring that he was probably bruised and exhausted and needed a dozen things more than her embrace. He caught her easily, lifting her off her feet and burying his face in her hair. I'm okay. We're okay. Don't ever make me wait like that again. Can't promise that, but I can promise I'll always come back. He set her down, cupping her face in his hands. It's working, Isabella. My strategy is working. Vitale's organization is fracturing, his allies are abandoning him, and by this time tomorrow the feds will be all over his legitimate businesses. So what happens next? Next we wait. See if he's smart enough to ask for terms, or stupid enough to keep fighting. Dominic glanced at Marco, who'd followed him in. Postguards at all our high-value locations. Double security on the ports. And get me eyes on Vitali himself. I want to know what he's doing every minute of every day. Already done, boss. Marco nodded and left to coordinate. Isabella pulled Dominic toward the bedroom. You need food, a shower, and sleep. In that order. Bossy. Someone has to take care of you. She pushed him toward the bathroom. Shower. I'll have Elena bring food. He obeyed, and by the time he emerged 20 minutes later in clean clothes with damp hair, Elena had laid out a feast on the bedroom's sitting area. They ate together in comfortable silence, the tension of the day slowly ebbing. Tell me something normal, Dominic said eventually. Something from your world, not mine. I need to remember what that feels like. So Isabella told him about a book that had come into the shop before all this started, a Victorian-era journal with water damage and mouse bites, barely legible. But she'd spent weeks carefully cleaning and restoring it, and discovered it belonged to a woman who'd traveled across America in the 1880s, documenting everything she saw. Her words were so alive, Isabella said, remembering, full of wonder and fear and determination. She was only 23, traveling alone in an era when women didn't do that. But she did it anyway because she wanted to see the world more than she wanted to be safe. Sounds like someone else I know. Dominic's hand found hers across the table. Someone who threw herself in front of a bullet because she wanted to save a stranger more than she wanted to be safe. I'm not brave like that woman was. You're braver. She chose her adventure. You had it thrust upon you and decided to stay anyway. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. I'm in awe of you, Isabella Hart. Keep talking like that and I might start believing it. Good. You should believe it. He stood, pulling her to her feet. Come to bed. I need to hold you while I can still think straight. They lay together in the darkness, wrapped around each other, and Isabella felt the day's tension finally drain from Dominic's body as sleep claimed him. She stayed awake longer, her mind racing with everything that had happened, everything that might still happen. She'd chosen this life, chosen him. And despite the fear and uncertainty, despite knowing that tomorrow might bring more violence, more danger, more impossible choices, she didn't regret it. This was living, raw and real and terrifying, but living nonetheless. She was finally, fully alive. The next day brought the news they'd been waiting for. Dominic took the call at noon, his expression shifting from cautious to satisfied as he listened. When? He asked. Where? Good. I'll be there. Same terms as before. 5 men, neutral ground. He ended the call and looked at Isabella with something like relief. Vitali wants to meet. Alone, just the two of us with our guards outside. He's ready to discuss terms. So it's really over. Almost. We still have to negotiate the details, make sure he understands there will be consequences if he ever comes at me again. Dominic ran a hand through his hair. But yes, it's over. He blinked first. When's the meeting? Tonight, 6 o'clock, at the Venetian Club again. He crossed to her, taking both her hands. After this, once everything's settled, I want to take you away from here, somewhere quiet, somewhere we can just be us for a while. Like where? I've got a house in Tuscany. Small vineyard, no neighbors for miles. We could spend a few weeks there, just breathing. His expression turned vulnerable. Would you want that? I'd want anything that involves you and breathing. She squeezed his hands. But first, you have to go convince a dangerous man not to kill you, so let's focus on that. The meeting that evening was anticlimactic in the best possible way. Dominic returned 2 hours later, looking tired but triumphant. It's done, he told Isabella and Marco, who'd been waiting anxiously. Vitali's agreed to pull back. He keeps his current territories, but he stays out of South Verona and away from the ports. In exchange, I won't push the federal investigation any further. Can you stop that? Isabella asked. I thought the IRS was already involved. They are. But the really damning evidence? That's still in my possession. I'll give Vitali just enough time to clean up his books before I hand everything over. Call it professional courtesy. Dominic shrugged. He'll still face some scrutiny, but nothing that'll destroy him completely. And you trust him to keep his word? I trust him to value his own survival. And he knows now that I have the resources and the will to destroy him if he crosses me again. Dominic pulled her close. It's over, Isabella. Really over. She wanted to believe it. Wanted to trust that the danger had passed, that they could finally build something resembling a normal life. But she'd learned enough about his world to know that peace was always temporary, always fragile. What are you thinking? Dominic asked, reading her expression. You're not celebrating. I'm thinking that there will always be another Nico, another Vitale, another threat waiting in the shadows. You're right, there probably will be. He didn't try to lie or reassure her with false promises, but we'll face them together, and each time we survive, we get stronger, smarter, better at protecting what's ours. Is that really a life? Always looking over your shoulder, always waiting for the next attack? It's my life. Our life, if you're still choosing it. He cupped her face, his eyes searching hers. I won't lie and say it'll ever be completely safe. But Isabella, nothing worth having is safe. Love isn't safe. Hope isn't safe. Living, really living, means accepting risk. She thought about that. About the woman she'd been before the bullet. Safe, isolated, half dead with grief and guilt. And the woman she was now, scared sometimes, uncertain, often, but alive in every cell of her body. Okay, she said finally. Okay, I'm still choosing this. Choosing you. Even with all the danger and uncertainty. Are you sure? Because once we're really in this together, once you're officially part of my world, there's no going back, Isabella. Everyone will know you're mine. That makes you both protected and vulnerable. I'm sure. She rose on her toes to kiss him. I've never been more sure of anything. His arms came around her, holding her like she might disappear. Then marry me. The words hung in the air between them, shocking in their suddenness. What? Marry me, not someday, not eventually, soon, as soon as we can arrange it. He pulled back to look at her face, his expression fierce and tender. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I don't want to waste any more time, Isabella. Life is too short and too dangerous to wait for the perfect moment. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything. His thumbs brushed over her cheekbones. I love you. I want you by my side, legally and permanently. I want everyone in this city to know you're mine and I'm yours. So marry me, please. Isabella's mind was spinning. They'd known each other less than a month. She'd been shot, kidnapped, and caught in a gang war. By any rational measure, this was insane. But when had anything about them been rational? Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, I'll marry you. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise, brilliant and transformative. He kissed her deeply, lifted her off her feet, and spun her around, laughing like she'd given him the world. You won't regret this, he promised. I'll spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you don't regret this. I better not, because if I do, I know people who can make you disappear. She said it deadpan, and his laugh was genuine and free. There's my girl, already learning the family business. They told Elena and Marco together that evening. Elena burst into tears and started babbling in Italian about weddings and dresses and what Dominic's father would have thought. Marco just smiled and shook Dominic's hand with a grip that probably hurt. About damn time, he said. I was starting to think you'd never be smart enough to lock her down. Careful, Dominic warned. That's my future wife you're talking about. And the best thing that ever happened to you. Marco turned to Isabella. Welcome to the family, Miss Hart, for whatever that's worth. It's worth everything, Isabella said, and meant it. They spent the next week planning a small ceremony, just close family and friends, nothing elaborate. Isabella called Marcy and asked her to be maid of honor, which required finally explaining at least some of what had happened. Let me get this straight, Marcy said slowly when they met for coffee under the watchful eyes of Isabella's security detail. You got shot saving some guy. He kept you at his place while you recovered. You fell in love. And now you're marrying him, all in the span of 3 weeks. 4 weeks, technically. Oh, well then, that's totally normal. Marcy stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Bells, have you lost your mind? Probably, but I'm happy, Mars. Happier than I've been in years. Isn't that what matters? Happiness matters when it's based on something real. But this, Marcy gestured helplessly, this is a whirlwind that's going to crash eventually. Maybe, but what if it doesn't? What if this is just what love looks like when you stop being afraid of it? Isabella reached across the table, squeezing her friend's hand. I know it seems crazy. I know it's fast and probably reckless. But Dominic makes me feel alive, Mars. Makes me remember what it's like to want things, to hope for things. I thought I'd lost that forever after Michael died. Marcy's expression softened. You're really sure about this? I've never been sure about anything in my life, but I'm as sure as I can be. Isabella smiled. So, will you stand up with me, even if you think I'm insane? Of course I will. Someone's got to be there to catch you when you fall. But Marcy was smiling too, and when they hugged, Isabella felt her friend's genuine support beneath the worry. The ceremony itself took place 2 weeks later in the penthouse, with only a dozen people present. The city sparkled beyond the windows as Isabella walked toward Dominic, wearing a simple white dress and carrying wildflowers. He looked devastating in a dark suit, his eyes locked on her face like she was the only thing in the world worth seeing. The officiant kept it brief. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, Dominic promising to protect her always, to love her even when she drove him crazy, to remember that he was more than just the organization. Isabella promising to be his anchor, his light in the darkness, to remind him every day what he was fighting for. I do, Dominic said, his voice steady and sure. I do, Isabella echoed, and felt the truth of it sink into her bones. When they kissed, sealing their unlikely union, applause broke out. Marcy was crying, Elena was crying, even Marco looked suspiciously emotional. Ladies and gentlemen, the officiant said with a smile, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Caruso. Isabella Hart, now Isabella Caruso, looked up at her husband and saw her whole future reflected in his eyes. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more danger, more impossible choices, more nights spent worrying while he faced down threats she couldn't fight. But there would also be mornings waking up in his arms, quiet evenings reading while he worked nearby, the steady knowledge that she'd found someone who saw all of her, the broken parts and the healing ones, and loved her anyway. Ready for this? Dominic whispered against her hair as they swayed to music during their first dance. Not even a little bit. She smiled up at him. But I'm doing it anyway. That's my girl, walking into danger with her eyes wide open. I learned from the best. They left for Tuscany 2 days later, escaping the city and everything that came with it for 3 weeks of blessed peace. The villa was everything Dominic had promised, small and rustic, surrounded by vineyards that stretched to the horizon. No guards, no security feeds, no phones ringing with crises that needed immediate attention. Just the two of them learning how to be married. They slept late and ate long meals on the terrace. Isabella taught Dominic about wine. She knew more than he expected about vintages and terroir from years of reading. He taught her basic Italian, laughing at her terrible pronunciation but kissing her until neither of them cared about grammar anymore. One evening, as they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose, Dominic pulled her close and said, Thank you. For what? For choosing this life. For choosing me, even knowing what it costs. His arms tightened around her. I don't deserve you, Isabella, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to. You already do. She turned in his embrace, cupping his face in her hands. You gave me back my life, Dominic. Reminded me what it means to be alive instead of just existing. That's worth more than all the danger and uncertainty combined. I love you. He said it like a vow, like a prayer. God, I love you. I love you too. She kissed him as the sun dipped below the horizon, as the stars began to emerge overhead, as the world around them faded to nothing but this moment, this man, this choice she'd made to step into the fire and let herself burn. They returned to Verona changed, stronger, more sure of each other and what they were building together. Isabella reopened her bookshop, though now it came with discreet security and regular visits from Marco checking in. Dominic continued running his organization, but with a new focus, consolidating legitimate operations, reducing the violent elements, building something that might last beyond his lifetime. It wasn't perfect. There were still late-night calls about problems that needed handling. Still days when Isabella saw the weight of his responsibilities crushing down on him. Still moments when fear crept in and she wondered if today would be the day someone came for him and succeeded. But there were also mornings tangled in silk sheets, laughing at nothing. Quiet evenings in the shop while she worked and he read, content just to be near each other. Dinners with Marcy and Elena where they felt almost normal, almost like any other couple building a life together. 6 months after their wedding, Isabella discovered she was pregnant. She told Dominic over breakfast, watching his face cycle through shock, fear, and then pure joy so bright it nearly blinded her. "A baby," he breathed, his hand coming to rest on her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby. Are you happy?" She needed to hear it, needed to know this was something he wanted. Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He pulled her into his lap, his face buried in her neck. Terrified, thrilled, overwhelmed. But yes, happy. So damn happy. Good. Because I'm all of those things too. She ran her fingers through his hair. This wasn't planned. Probably isn't the smartest timing given your world. Our world, he corrected. And it's perfect timing because there's never a perfect time. We'll figure it out. Make sure our child is safe and loved and knows they came from something real. Their daughter was born on a spring morning, screaming her way into the world with her father's dark eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. They named her Sophia Marie, Sophia for Dominic's mother, Marie for Isabella's grandmother. She was perfect and terrifying and changed everything all over again. Dominic held his daughter with hands that had ended lives, stared down at her tiny face, and wept. Isabella watched him promise this new life that he'd protect her, that he'd be better for her, that he'd build a world where she could grow up safe, even if he had to tear down empires to do it. And she believed him. Because if there was one thing the past year had taught her, it was that Dominic Caruso kept his promises. That beneath the violence and power was a man who loved fiercely and completely, who would move heaven and earth for the people he claimed as his. Years passed. Sophia grew from a baby into a toddler into a bright-eyed girl who loved books like her mother and had her father's strategic mind. The organization evolved, becoming more legitimate with each passing year as Dominic slowly shifted focus from crime to business. It was a long process. You couldn't just walk away from that world. But he was doing it, step by careful step, building something cleaner for his daughter to inherit if she chose. Isabella watched him change, watched the hard edges soften incrementally without losing the core strength that made him who he was. He was still dangerous when he needed to be, still commanded absolute loyalty from his people. But he was also a father who read bedtime stories, and a husband who remembered to bring home flowers for no reason, and a man who'd found redemption in the love of a woman who'd thrown herself in front of a bullet for a stranger. On their 5th anniversary, they returned to Tuscany, this time with Sophia, who ran through the vineyard shrieking with joy while her parents laughed. That night, after their daughter was asleep, Isabella and Dominic sat on the terrace under the stars, hands entwined, comfortable in the silence. "Do you ever regret it?" Dominic asked eventually. "That night in the street, jumping in front of that bullet, choosing this life?" Isabella thought about it honestly. Thought about the fear and danger and impossible situations she'd faced. Thought about the parts of Dominic's world that still made her uncomfortable. The violence she couldn't quite reconcile with the man she loved. But then she thought about Sophia sleeping peacefully inside. About mornings in bed with sunlight streaming through windows. About the way Dominic still looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. About feeling alive and valued and loved so completely, it sometimes took her breath away. "No," she said finally. "Not for a single second. You? I regret that you got hurt. That bullet was meant for me." His thumb traced over the scar on her shoulder, barely visible now but still there. But the rest of it, falling in love with you, building this life together? Never. Not ever. Good answer. She leaned into him, content and whole in a way she'd never imagined possible. Though I still think we're both a little crazy. Definitely crazy. He kissed the top of her head. But we're crazy together, and that makes all the difference. They sat there as the night deepened around them, two broken people who'd found each other in the chaos and decided to make something beautiful from the wreckage. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been safe, but it had been real and alive and worth every moment of fear and uncertainty. Isabella had saved a stranger's life in a street full of bullets, and that stranger had saved her right back, not from death, but from the slow, quiet dying that came from living in fear and guilt and isolation. Together, they'd built something impossible, something that shouldn't work but did anyway, because they'd chosen each other every day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. The stars wheeled overhead, the vineyard whispered in the breeze, and inside the villa, their daughter dreamed of stories yet to be told. The future stretched before them, uncertain and full of possibility, and for once, Isabella wasn't afraid. She'd learned that the best things in life were worth fighting for, worth risking everything for, worth stepping into the fire for, because sometimes the flames didn't destroy you. Sometimes they forged you into something stronger, something real, something that could last forever, if you were brave enough to reach for it and hold on tight, no matter what tried to tear you apart. And she was brave enough. They both were. Together, they were unstoppable.